It is your PrisonPlanet.tv memberships that fund so much of what we do here on this operation. And then we're more than happy for the TV show after it's aired live, then be leaked out onto the web to tens of millions of people. That's our goal.
Welcome to the Alex Jones Show. I am not Alex Jones. I am the guest host today, Friday, July 27th, in the year 2012. I am Holland Vandennieuwenhof. I am joined also by my fellow guest co-host, Chris Emery.
Thanks for having us. I want to thank the staff with AJ Productions. This is actually quite an honor to be here, and it's awesome. It's a great opportunity. We're going to have a lot of good information for you folks, so stay with us through 2 o'clock.
Yeah, exactly. We were on the show earlier in the week, and afterwards Alex asked us to guest host, and it is our honor and pleasure to fill in for him. This is actually, somewhat of a dream of mine. I've been listening to Alex Jones since 1999 when I first got out of the Marine Corps. Here in Austin, when I lived here, listening on the old KLBJ. And now here I am several years later, guest hosting one day for Alex Jones, and I can take this off the bucket list. I've done it. But we are here. We are, if you don't know, we are the producers and of the movie A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City, 1995, which is the deconstruction of the official story of the Oklahoma City bombing. And it's the culmination of 16 years of active resistance to the official story by the truth seekers in Oklahoma City and around the country and the globe, people who have been involved in the story from the beginning, fighting the info war, the agenda that was tried to push down the throats of the American people following the Oklahoma City bombing. And, of course, A Noble Lie is available at the info shop. Highly advise you pick it up. It's, as I have been told time and time again, the best expose of the Oklahoma City bombing produced thus far. And Chris Emery is the narrator and producer, but he is the voice of A Noble Lie. Chris?
It was basically 12 years in the making, and we used a lot of the information in the Bombing Investigation Committee. Folks, if you really want a good review, at least what they call a primer of the case, please go ahead and get a copy of this. You will be amazed at the information on there. We're looking at doing a follow-up for the next anniversary in 2013 to add more clips, extended interviews. So next year is even going to be, we're taking the next step. And this thing is sold absolutely amazing. 21 different countries, foreign countries, very well here in the U.S. Thanks, of course, in large part to Alex Jones and his staff. It was a huge jump start on it. And we were very honored to be accepted at 4 different film festivals in a 5-month period of capturing the Best Picture Feature Documentary honor at the Bare Bones Film Festival in Oklahoma. And so it's just taken off like great guns. And the information, I guess, is what really it speaks for itself. And I was very honored to work with the film crew.
Yes, it was very pleasing to see the reception by the like-minded community. That was very pleasing to see that they approved of our efforts and they appreciated the information that we had to show them about the bombing. But we've also experienced some recognition from the filmmaking industry itself, which is pleasing to know that we did produce a very good product, and it's been recognized in several film festivals and won awards. And so I think that one of the primary reasons that we tried to get the documentary out in this time, right before the year 2012, was not just to expose the lie that is the official story of Oklahoma City, but to expose the methodology of the false flag attack. That because people who are guilty, perpetrators who are still walking around, were not held accountable, by definition, it will happen again. It has happened again. And recently, in recent days, we may be looking at its manifestation. And we'll be having our guests on, Andrew Griffin of Red Dirt Report, Stephanie Sledge of thegovernmentrag.com, to be talking about the Colorado shooting, the Tucson shooting, and the implications or tomorrow. So thank you for joining us on the Alex Jones Show. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I am not Alex Jones. I am Holland Vandennieuwenhof, guest hosting today, Friday, July 27th, joined by Chris Emery, my fellow producer on A Noble Lie. It is our pleasure, like I said, to be in Alex's studio here in Austin, Texas, and being able to present this information from this pulpit, this not the ballot box or the cartridge box, but the preacher's box, talking about the issues that are very important. And like I said, it's been a pleasure and an honor to be here. Chris, Chris introduced me to the tangy tangerine this morning. I said, I really need something to keep me on ball today. I really don't want to lose my train of thought. And I'm always reluctant to jump on the bandwagon of anything. And I've heard a lot about tangy tangerine and the longevity products, but I must say that I can feel it. And this is the first time I've tried it. And Chris, you went jogging around Town Lake this morning. I
went jogging, got up extra early, and I basically have a daily regimen. I'll go jogging at least 5 days a week, do the tangy tangerine, do the rebound first, tangy tangerine twice a day, and also have the Majestic Earth and the longevity. And I was turned on to it by Deborah Stevens and Richard Reeves with the InfoWars team. Over the last 35 years, I've been approached on different, trying to market different products. This is the first one that I really locked into. And the reason being is not only because Alex and his staff are carrying it, and I believe in the product, that I actually contacted, a lot of folks may not be aware of this, but I actually was a photographer with NCAA football in the NFL for 9.5 years. 2 weeks ago, I got on the phone with two of the guys, trainers that I kept in touch with over the years. They went on to basically work in the pro ranks. And I says, what about this longevity product? And no sooner than I got the word longevity out of my mouth, I says, if you have a chance to market this product, please do so. And they said the main reason is it is a plant-based supplement.
This is what the trainers are saying, the professional trainers.
Both of them, one owns a very successful chain of workout clubs in Chicago and Milwaukee, and the other one in Atlanta. They don't even talk to each other anymore. And I got the same summary from both of them within a matter of about 20 minutes, talking to them on the phone. And I says, that's it. I'm locking and loading on this. And I tell you what, folks, I reached a threshold. I was losing weight when I came back from Australia. I was about 25 pounds overweight. I got to a threshold, and I couldn't get below that threshold. And I lost another 7 pounds getting on longevity. My food bill has been cut in half. I'm eating better. I'm feeling better. I have a lot more energy during the day. And, folks, this is the real deal. You have got to lock onto this. And InfoWarsTeam.com has all the information, so I encourage you to do it. And I'm a perfect example of what's going on.
Yeah. And given the huge amount of products on the market, I mean, there's probably 1 million different supplements that promise 1 million different things, which is one reason that it's hard for me to jump on board with anything, because it's so hard to discern what is genuine and it is not. So we're hearing this feedback from professional trainers, guys who have no dog in the hunt, except they're in the market, so they must actually advocate the products that actually work and produce results.
Exactly.
And apparently they are top of the line. So I'm a believer now, and not only because of the testimony, because I had some this morning for the first time, just a little. I didn't want to overdo it and be bouncing off the walls, but I am a believer. And given these days where we are under constant environmental and chemical assault, we are being bombarded by toxins left and right. Our food is not nurturing. It's not giving us the nutrients that our bodies need. We need something to overcome, not just trying to watch our eating habits, because it's hard just to go to the grocery store and pick out the right foods, even if they're organic and pesticide-free. You're still dealing with a lot of problems with the environment and the toxins that you deal with on a daily basis, from the light bulbs in your house to the smart meter.
Exactly.
That's pumping out radiation every second of the day that you're in the house. You need the genuine, natural stuff that's going to take you over the top to try to overcome that as much as possible. We need every advantage we can. So obviously, go check out the longevity products at the info shop and get ahead and live long and prosper. Because obviously, I was having a discussion last night with Deborah Stevens about this. There is no way that most of the stuff that is basically the products and the food that we ingest, it cannot be an accident. This is the 21st century. It's not like they can't figure out that the curly-Q light bulbs emit mercury at a constant basis, poisonous gases. I mean, the one thing they chose to replace the incandescent light bulb is also one of the most poisonous devices ever put on the market.
One of the key things that people have to remember is that right now, a lot of folks are not eating actual food. They're eating food products or that are imitations of food. So what longevity does, it breaks it down to the basic building blocks of the nutrition that's coming from the plants. And I was turned on to good nutrition about 25 years ago. This is taking it to a whole new level. And like I said, I got to know a lot of those trainers. And I was on my way to actually becoming an overweight person. And, you know, at my age now, it would have been probably beyond the point of return. What I encourage you folks to do is get on the InfoWarsTeam.com website, get onto the longevity button, and just see what they have. And it's not only the food supplements, but, I mean, the Safe Cosmetics. There's a lot of other, coffees and so forth. And this is the stuff that's the real deal. It comes from the Mother Earth, and it's not processed and not synthetic. I know Alex and his team have done a lot of good research on this, and this is a company you can trust. Exactly.
So get on board, get healthy, because we need as many healthy and awake info warriors out there as possible. We need every advantage we can. Today on the Alex Jones Show, we're going to have a couple of guests on. The first one is going to be Andrew Griffin of the RedDirtReport.com. And he is going to be looking at the shooting in Aurora in the light of what we know to be true about deep state operations, false flag operations. This government, this regime's capability and capacity and proven dirty hands in using mass murder, in executing mass murder to execute a political agenda. And unfortunately, the shooting in Colorado, I don't want it to be this way. When it first happened, I was like, you know, I'm tired of the false flag attacks. I'm tired of this being ramrodded by blood down our throats. But we cannot walk away from the facts that there are a lot of fishy things with the shooting in Aurora, including with the suspect, his connections to mind control research. And they are deep. If you look at Wayne Madsen's work on James Holmes' connections to
very mysterious.
Yes, NIH funding and so forth. The first thought that struck me was, you know what? There's not a whole lot of people in this country, in this world, who are involved in mind control research, and then one of them just happens to shoot up a theater in Colorado at basically the most politically advantageous time for the establishment, when Operation Fast and Furious is exploding on the headlines, despite the best efforts of the mainstream media, when apparently the Congress is voting on a UN gun control ban next week. We cannot avoid a train of coincidences that point to an agenda.
It's you try to wrap your mind around this, Holland, and you look at the perpetrators, you look at the events, and you have to look at the bigger picture. And a lot of you viewers and listeners that are regular, or some of the new ones, this is not something we're making up. You have to look at the real world application. They want to take our rights away, and it's a trickle method. And before you know it, it's going to end up being a tsunami. You're going to wake up one morning and say, wow, what happened? We have the opportunity to reverse this. And every single time something like this happens, whether it be Oklahoma City or the shooting, please do your research, find out the facts, and see who the people are behind the mask or behind the curtain. What's going on? Who's controlling all of this? And
yes,
get your answers.
Exactly. And let's give credit where credit due to the information warriors out there. I mean, the brass casings from the shooting were barely warm on the theater floor before information was already being produced by independent journalists, bloggers, talk show hosts, and so forth that indicted the official story, that called into question what we were being told. And this is a testament to the strength of our movement, and the effect that we're having in the information sphere is that we can counter the propaganda almost as soon as it comes out. And I often think that it's kind of a double-edged sword, this information revolution that we're winning.
We've got Aaron Dykes' article, excellent article.
Yes, we're going to be going over that.
Treaty.
Exactly. So. And it's a double-edged sword, because the more that we expose their agenda and wake people up, frankly, the more desperate they become to implement that agenda. And desperate psychopaths are a dangerous prospect indeed. And you see things like this happening. I often wonder, if we just kind of accepted everything and let ourselves be led into the long, dark night of oppression, would it be easier for us? Obviously not. We've got to fight. We've got to fight this information war, and that's what we're doing here. And it's our pleasure to do on the Alex Jones Show. Yes, Aaron Dykes did do an excellent article. Look it up on Infowars.com. Bombshell, leaked UN gun treaty does ban guns. Well, obviously, it's not like the UN's been a strong proponent of gun rights ever. Besides states, besides nation states, they can have all the weapons they like, but individual citizens cannot.
Living in New Mexico, was able to carry a handgun in the mountains, and it was more for protection. We had a lot of wildlife issues up there, black bear and so forth, wildfires running rampant. So, but that's one level. And then to have Obama, 3 days ago at a political fundraising speech or whatever it was, say, well, the Second Amendment deals just with hunting and so forth. It's like he has absolutely, I know he knows what the Second Amendment is.
He was a constitutional professor.
So it's not like he's dumb, but he knows there's an agenda that he's trying to ram through. And we're the last bastion on Earth, besides, I believe, Switzerland, that can actually have...
We're the only superpower or major power that's where the citizens are, to a real extent, allowed to own firearms.
So why are we going to give up our gun rights? I lived in Australia for 2.5 months. It's horrible. Those people over there can't own a gun unless it's specifically licensed for a hunting club. That's ludicrous. I can't even imagine.
That was based on another false flag attack. The shooting, where was that, Chris?
It was, let's see here, down in...
down Tasmania.
Yes.
Another false flag attack, most likely. And that shooter, if you look at pictures of the shooter in Tasmania, all wild-eyed, wild-haired, that they're repeating the same formula for this shooting.
Exactly.
Anyways, you're listening to the Alex Jones Show. I am Holland Vandennieuwenhof. I'm joined here by my guest co-host, Chris Emery, and we'll be back on the other side. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. We've been discussing recent events. If you've been listening, you know that we are producers for A Noble Lie, which is available at the info shop, looking at the Oklahoma City bombing in the light of suppressed evidence that exposes the official story to be a cruel myth. And knowing what we know and knowing what we've discovered over the years in relation to Oklahoma City and related events, when you look at the first bombings at the Twin Towers in 1993, 2 years prior to the Oklahoma City bombing, an attack that was executed by a Ryder truck with an ammonium bomb, which later played out in Oklahoma City. And then you see that the bombing in 1993 was exposed by CBS News and the New York Times as a fraud, that the FBI had provided live explosives to the informant to carry out the attack. Knowing what you know and what we know about these false flag attacks, we cannot turn away from what has occurred in Colorado and look at that horrific event through that lens. I don't want it to be that way. It'd be much easier if it was just a lone gunman, a wild man that we can, lock away for life and problem solved. But unfortunately, it is not so. And we will have on two guests. Right after this, we're going to have on Andrew Griffin of RedDirtReport.com to discuss some of the anomalous aspects of the shooting in Colorado and the implications for what appears to be the agenda behind that, which is gun control. And Aaron Dykes of InfoWars, he put out an article yesterday or today. I highly suggest you look it up. If you want to do your homework on the UN gun control treaty that is being voted on about a week and a half after the Colorado shooting, imagine that. This Congress hasn't debated or entertained a gun control issue in quite a long time. But now we have this horrific shooting to frame that debate in. And there are some interesting provisions. I highly suggest this is an extensive article. He did his homework. I highly suggest you go through and check it out, but pay a special attention to Article 15, which is to be voted on by Congress. And it is subtitled International Assistance. And I quote directly from the article here. In fulfilling the obligation of this treaty, state parties of the state, that meaning agencies to include the military and the police agencies, parties of these states, these nation states, may seek legal assistance, legislative assistance, technical assistance, institutional capacity building, material assistance, or financial assistance to implement the edicts of this treaty.
You're going to have foreign troops showing up in your neighborhood, coming door to door, kicking your door down if you don't want to let them in, and then take your firearms, and you're unarmed. You have no way of defending yourself.
Well, a general rule when looking at any kind of law or treaty that is passed by the government is to look at the language and see what's allowed with your wildest imagination, what can you get away with under this language, and then take it a step further, and that's what's going to happen, because they always exceed their mandate or the legal boundaries of whatever mandate they're operating under anyway. So they're going to go farther than this by definition, by their past behavior. Furthermore, state parties shall assist in investigations, prosecutions, judicial proceedings in relation to the violations of the national measures implemented to comply with obligations under the provisions of this treaty. And of course, if that's not wide open enough, at the very end they say, and may provide other forms of assistance as needed. So they can just pretty much do anything they want.
It's an open-ended clause, yeah. And I can't see the states giving up the states' rights on, I mean, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, Montana, Wyoming.
Yeah.
It's not going to be an easy capitulation.
If there's ever an argument for getting involved at the state, local level, it is now. Obviously, you need to call your congressman. You need to call your congressman and tell him that if he votes for this UN gun control treaty, that you and all your friends and all your activist organizations and every media outlet that you can call up, you're going to be out on the streets making sure that this person no longer represents you in Congress or in this government, because this is an abrogation of the Second Amendment. And the thing is, the one time, whenever we do lose our guns, if that happens, we are never getting them back. It's not going to be a temporary lull. Once we lose them, they're gone. Once a bureaucracy to enforce a law has been established, it does not go away.
Several articles on InfoWars earlier this week. There has been not only a slight uptick, but a massive surge in gun sales after this catastrophe in Aurora. And that's a sign people understand.
Conversely, I mean, Obama's his worst enemy. I mean, every time they get out there and they start talking about gun control, start buying stock in gun companies, because gun sales go through the roof. And with good reason. Let's go to the gun store after this. Anyways, you're listening to The Alex Jones Show. I'm Holland Vandennieuwenhof, joined by Chris Emery. We'll be right back after this. That is not how we got to where we are with establishing this country as a repository of human individual rights, freedom. We did not get that way from backing down. And there is nothing to be gained, everything to be lost by backing down from the war that has been declared upon us. I mentioned earlier in the show that we were under chemical and biological assault through our toxins in the environment and the food that we are supposed to be eating, but we're also under physical assault, I'm afraid, and we saw that in Colorado with the recent shooting, the Batman shooting, the horror in Aurora. And we have our next guest on right now, Andrew Griffin of the Red Dirt Report. Andrew, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Holland.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us. Andrew is a good friend of Chris and I's. He is also broadcasting and reporting from Oklahoma City. And you've done a lot of good work recently. And you've also been focusing a lot on the recent apparent false flag attack in Colorado. You featured Wayne Madsen's excellent report on James Holmes's probable connections to DARPA, to mind control. And like I said before, people, there's not a whole lot of people in this country who are working on DARPA mind control programs, and just one of them happens to just shoot up a theater in Colorado at a very politically opportune time. And I can put up with a few coincidences, a couple of them, but when they start adding up together and they point towards a purpose, I've got to start asking questions and see if the game is rigged, and I believe it is so. What do you think? What are your thoughts on what is happening and the fallout from Colorado, Andrew?
Well, Holland and Chris, I woke up on the morning of July 20th, and I just had a bad feeling. And I tune into cable network, and sure enough, there's a shooting has occurred. It was about 4:30 in the morning, and they're already reporting about this shooting in Aurora, Colorado. I immediately started researching this. The British newspapers, of course, they're 7 hours or so ahead of us, so they had more detailed information about it. And I immediately thought back to what happened in Tucson, Arizona last year, January of 2011, with Jared Lee Loughner, and I immediately started researching this event. The shooter's name eventually came about. There were all sorts of rumors, reports. There was a second gunman, that there was the smoke bomb. There was a diversion. The gunman allegedly had gotten a phone call and opened the emergency door in the back of the theater. About 20 minutes.
That was actually perhaps an accomplice. As I watched that CNN clip, and it was made pretty clear that he received the unknown person, the John Doe number 2. Imagine that. Except it was in a dark theater, so I guess we can't get any good eyewitness descriptions, unlike Oklahoma City.
Well, right, yeah, and it's interesting. There is a young woman who the media seems to be drawn to, who says she had a clear description of the gunman. She, like a number of people in the Tucson incident last year, seemed to give this detailed information, whereas the police, if you listen to the police radio recordings, they're clearly looking for 2 people. There was a report of a man with a plaid shirt on, a blue shirt.
Blue checkered shirt.
Correct. So, clearly, you always have to pay attention. I learned this from 9/11 that morning, to always look at the initial reports, study them closely, try to record them, and then compare them to what eventually comes out within the next couple of hours and days. The story always changes, as we saw here in Oklahoma City with the reports of multiple, another bomb being removed from Murrah rubble. So we have to watch this. We have to stay on top of these stories. And that's why I immediately began typing a story. You can find it on reddirtreport.com. It's called Midnight Massacre in Theater Number 9. And as I told you, Holland, before, this number 9 really struck with me, because that always comes up, number 9. Remember the Beatles' White Album? They had the Revolution number 9. This was a trigger. Was the Batman Dark Knight Rises, was that a trigger? Was there something in the film? There was all these triggers. Bane, you have the Joker. He thinks he's the Joker. He thinks he's in some sort of, alternate reality, which goes in line with what he was studying.
Yeah, that's the funny thing is I saw the ABC News, they got a hold of a video where the young suspect, James Holmes, is discussing when he was 18 years old, working on his National Institutes of Health grant, one of 6 people in the country to be awarded that grant. Apparently is pretty lucrative. He was working on what he termed temporal illusions. And he described it as a project that he was working on himself, fusing, in his words, fantasy and reality. So we had this kid working on this project that involved in neurosciences, fusing reality and illusion. And then a couple years later, this same kid believes he's the Joker and shoots up a movie theater. So in my mind, the question I have is, was he made to believe that he was actually living in a movie? And from what all the photographs and video that have come out so far of him in custody, it looks like he still thinks that way.
Well, right. Yeah. I mean, if you look at Paul Joseph Watson's reports on this, the guy thinks he's, living in some sort of alternate reality. He's done some excellent work on researching what's going on here. I got a report yesterday from a reader in Australia who was saying, we're hearing that this guy's in jail and says he doesn't even know what he's doing there or what happened. I mean, this totally echoes, as Paul Joseph Watson wrote, this is like Sirhan Sirhan, who shot, allegedly, they say, Robert F. Kennedy in 1968. I think 1968 was a big year for a lot of these things. And right there in Austin, Texas, you had Charles Whitman, the Texas Bell Tower massacre there at UT. And, he said in the days prior to going crazy on August 1st, 1966, that he was not feeling like himself. Something was wrong. There were, he went through some naval program. Although he was a Marine, he went through a naval program. And we don't know a whole lot about what happened there. That was in the early 60s. So, just as we have, not that James Holmes was in the military, but there was his father.
Well, his father was working with DARPA in cognitive development sciences. And that is the military. That's a Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. And DARPA is the tip of the spear when it comes to spooky mind control and military technologies. And in fact, his father was working on the so-called super soldier program, transhumanism, taking the human body and the human senses and enhancing them through cybernetics, cyborg technology, and so forth to produce a super soldier. someone who could kill people more effectively. And then his son, who's also working in the neurosciences, shoots up a theater under the illusion that he had been talking about for years, that he was the Joker. So go ahead.
No, that's correct. And you have, I mean, you could look, there's so many layers to this onion of what happened at that theater in Aurora. And going back to through the Holmes family, you have, I would say, there is a political link with the current administration, with the president's links to a congressman in the district that is represented in Aurora. He was there in 2006. What's interesting is that Dr. Robert Holmes, that would be James Holmes's father, his father was involved in what they think are some
Military intelligence, is that correct?
Yeah, military intelligence with the Turks in Turkey.
Yeah, he took advanced language training and was sent to Turkey, which is a crucial NATO ally. It's on the front lines with the Soviet Union. So when someone in the military takes advanced language lessons and gets sent to Turkey, they are military intelligence.
Well, right, and what got me to thinking was that President Obama's mother there's pictures showing her of being possibly in Lebanon. They think that Stanley Armour Dunham, that was the grandfather of the president, was in a similar program in the Middle East. So you have these connections there. But, you know, that's just one part of it. So there may be a link with Colorado. You have Buckley Air Force Base, which, as I was looking into it, let's see, well, I can't find it right now, but they have space-based weaponry programs. They study all sorts of things related to space. It's very secretive.
And here's another thing about these shootings. They've both occurred in counties where the police departments and the sheriff's departments are heavily militarized. Aurora obviously just made headlines before the shooting a couple weeks before, when Judge Napolitano called them out and said that their unconstitutional and illegal detainment of dozens of people at a road stop looking for a bank robbery suspect. Napolitano called them out.
Which is
on
surprise coming from her.
Yeah, from him. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the police officers were going barrel first, searching cars, women, family, children. And then we look at the Tucson shooting, which happened in Pima County, Arizona, which, of course, is where the Jose Guerrera shooting happened, where a SWAT team shot a Marine over 100 times because he was responding to a disturbance outside his house when they did a no-knock search warrant for frivolous reasons. It was probably an illegal warrant, and they found nothing incriminating to indicate this honorable man who had served his country and the military was a criminal at all. So we're seeing like this justification of the police state because these events are happening in these areas where there's a lot of federal grant money controlling the methods and methodology and how law enforcement deals with the people.
Well, you know, on reddirtreport.com, I linked a story from the Oklahoman, the large daily newspaper here in Oklahoma City, ironically owned by Philip Anschutz now, where
they brought up of the Anschutz medical facility.
Exactly. So you have that strange connection. But the top story is Feds arrest Oklahoma high school student who bought guns, talked of hiding bodies. So you already have this copycat effect taking place, and that's something that a guy I follow, his name's Lauren Coleman, he writes a blog called the Twilight Language Blog. He had been actually talking about something possibly happening July 20th. It's a little strange, but he said there would be, it was a Bane connection, the villain in the new Batman film, and of course Bane Capital, which has been in the news because of the connections with Mitt Romney, the Republican presidential candidate.
One of the connections, Mitt Romney ran it, Bane Capital.
Well, exactly.
And when someone releases a movie in 2012, which is an election year, featuring a Bane character, the writers, I mean, they're not operating in a cocoon. They know what's going on in the world. I think there's a reason for that.
Right, and if you look at some of the promotional films for like Mountain Dew, Soda Pop, there is very strange backwards sort of reverse filming techniques taking place in this film while incorporating scenes from the Batman film and some strange things being repeated over and over. Could that have been a trigger thing? What was the thing?
Well, at the very least, I think these things are implanted in the public consciousness beforehand, these little seeds that will sprout once they're given nourishment by the attack, perhaps. We're seeing that time and time again. The predictive programming is to activate these triggers. I mean, what we're looking at, people, is this is the year 2012. This is 21st century, and MK Ultra, as we knew it, in the public domain, supposedly ended in the late 60s. We know this to be untrue, but the technology has been developing since at least 50 years ago. When we were told it stopped, we know that it's grown very advanced, very sophisticated. They're not just pulling things out of the wind these days. They have a proven methodology, and they don't take any shortcuts. They have manuals for this stuff. And I have no doubt that at the very least, the timing of this is fishy. The circumstances are fishy. We have eyewitness accounts, and obviously, one must always take eyewitness accounts with a grain of salt. Right. This is part of the investigatory process. We've dealt with this ourselves in investigating the Oklahoma City bombing. A lot of times you deal with eyewitness accounts that don't quite match up, and that's human nature. But you do not discard these eyewitness accounts without reason. And until the official agencies come up with a very good reason to discard the reports, multiple, of someone receiving a phone call inside the theater before the shooting and then propping open the door, I have to say that there's probably substance to that if they are discarding it.
Well, you know, there was something I wrote about in fact, in the days prior to the shooting, and it had to do with the, as you may recall, in 1984, July 18th, 1984, there was a massacre at a McDonald's restaurant in San Ysidro, California, which is a suburb of San Diego. Of course, we know about the military influence in that area.
Oh, yes. I was based in Camp Pendleton, just north of San Diego. Right.
So you had James Huberty shoot up the McDonald's, children, men, women, everybody. 22 were killed, I believe, as I recall. I remember that distinctly that summer because it was right before the Olympics. Everyone was watching, waiting for the Olympics to start. And so you have a major massacre happen in the U.S. in a city-controlled, really military-influenced community.
Oh, it's military controlled, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then you have this happening, I believe, 7 days before, about 7 or 8 days before the Olympics start. This time in London, which I've been writing about as well. And of course, there's a lot of people are very on edge about this particular Olympics this year because of threats of terrorism and so forth. And
yeah, of course, Alex and his team have done an excellent job in exposing the security lapses and perhaps purposeful lapses in the security with G4S in London, and the whistleblower talking about the fact that security was a joke, that they were, literally just walking guns and knives through these scanners that weren't even turned on, that it was just a big charade, and that they actually spent more time talking about a proposed evacuation of London in the event of a major terrorist attack, like this was a probability, not just a contingency plan. They spent more time talking about that. The whole thing about the London Olympics is that we're seeing a lot of indications that something may happen, which makes me look at it we haven't really, most of the predictive programming that has been discovered is usually after the fact. Now, is because of all this information from London coming out because we're getting better? Or is it some kind of advanced disinfo program? I don't know. We'll see. I don't make predictions because, obviously that can go wrong. But if something does happen in London, and we have the shooting, just like in the San Ysidro shooting in the early 80s, right before the LA Olympics. And if they're doing that, obviously that is to repeat the formula. And that was one of the first modern mass shootings, and a lot of gun control action was taken after that. So one cannot deny the timing on so many levels.
Well, and as you and Chris and I know, we respect Dave McGowan's work, his book, Program to Kill. I always use that as a reference book because he is very thorough in his investigation of mass murder, serial killers, and so forth.
Exactly.
So that is a good reference.
We're going to break right now, folks. We'll be right back after this. You're listening to The Alex Jones Show. Welcome back to The Alex Jones Show. We are talking to Andrew Griffin of the RedDirtReport.com. We are discussing the shooting in Tucson, Arizona. Its likely connection to mind control and its likely agenda. Andrew, what do you see in the future? What do you see developing in terms of gun control right now? I mean, that appears to be the agenda. Everything. The gun control treaty, Fast and Furious, which is a big deal. They had to have something to overcome Fast and Furious. That's the thing. Whenever the feds get their hands caught dirty with blood on their hands, just like Oklahoma City, which was 2 years after Waco, they have to come up with another attack that they instigate on their own to cover up the blood they have shed. And frankly, I think that Aurora is their cover, trying to make us ignore the blood they have on their hands from at least 2,000 people who have perished at the hands of guns that were smuggled into Mexico by the largest gun smuggler in American history, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. So what do you see, Andrew?
Well, as I noted earlier, Lauren Coleman of the Twilight Language blog, he's followed this thread basically with what's going on in Aurora. He calls it a Red Dawn event. If you know the name Colorado, color red. You have Aurora meaning dawn. You have so you see something there on a more synchromystical level, and I think that they use that as a trigger moment to yes, I think come after guns, but I also think they want a confrontation. I think that's what they're building towards. You see so many things happening, especially along the U.S.-Mexico border. The border's wide open, yet we're sending troops overseas still to Afghanistan and trying to keep that disaster ongoing. Everything you would think they would do, they're doing the exact opposite. So clearly it's going to bring us to a breaking point where I think something big is going to happen. I think this was just part of that greater operation, and that there will be more in the near future.
It's a strategy of tension.
Strategy of tension, absolutely. That's what I see. And you know, just talking to regular people, they sense something. They sense something major is wrong around the world. I heard the song "Ball of Confusion" by the Temptations yesterday, and it made me think. You know, the lyrics talk about just things are just out of control. No one knows what's going on. You know, you have politicians saying that they're gonna you know, save you or do this or that. And they don't
2012 is in large part being at least pumped up as some kind of pivotal year, and it is in many ways. Of course, it's not the end of the world as we know it. I'm not getting into the Mayan prophecies at all, but on many levels it is. We have the presidential election. We have the economy that is on the tipping point. I mean, it's being artificially sustained right now just to keep us afloat through the election, so it doesn't affect the politics too much, because they do have an agenda to get through. And I do think they want Obama to serve a second term, because just think of what he's got away with in the first term. When he's in the second term and he's a lame duck and he's got nothing to lose, boy, watch out. And if gun control gets passed, implementing the health care program, it's going to be an interesting time. But you're right.
And you all mentioned the Martin Bryant shooting in Tasmania in the 90s. You know, look what happened in Australia right after that.
One shooting. It's not like Australia had suffered a rash of gun crimes. That's never occurred there. But then after one outrageous shooting under impossible circumstances, I recall one of the Special Forces officers saying that was better shooting than he could do. We're out of time, Andrew. As always, it's been great. Give the audience your website.
Yeah, it's Red Dirt Report, reddirtreport.com.
Thank you for joining us. You're listening to The Alex Jones Show. We'll be right back after this with Stephanie Sledge. Welcome back to The Alex Jones Show. That first hour flew by.
Sure did.
Because we are presenting powerful, hard-hitting information. There's no wiggle room here on the info team. I'm glad to temporarily join them today. Myself and my co-producer on A Noble Lie, Chris Emery. I am Holland Vandennieuwenhof, writer and producer for Free Mind Films. Alex asked us to guest host today. It's an honor. This is fun. This operation is really first class. It's really good to work with this caliber of people.
Well-oiled machine. We have a lot of good information here, just a multi-level gold nuggets of information, and we're trying to do it in an organized piecemeal system. So
yeah.
I really, it's good to be back in Austin. Lived here for 10 years, and it was a great honor to be invited down. But folks, please support Infowars.com. Get on their store. There's just an absolute cornucopia of information that you can, it's at your disposal. Books, videos, and so forth. We're going to go ahead and plug a few of those at the bottom of the hour. But this is definitely the best. And I'm saying this from experience, having worked as an independent contractor with CBS for 4 years. This operation is that much better than what I've had was at my disposal. And this is the real news. It's not fluff. It's not fake. It's not, second, third hand. This is first-hand, hot off the press stuff that you're going to be reviewing.
This is fearless reporting, truly fearless. No one owns this information. No one owns our viewpoint. And we are not beholden to anyone. And the InfoWars team certainly is not beholden to anyone. We are here in the information revolution to present this information to the people unvarnished, unfiltered, unpackaged by the mainstream media, because as we all know, the mainstream media is obsolete, and that is being proven time and time again as people divorce themselves from the worldview that is being perpetuated by these corporate-controlled entities. And you must remember that it is not in the interests of the mainstream media to foment unrest at the true state of affairs. When there is political unrest or so forth, corporate profits go down. These are corporate-controlled entities, and it is their interest. By definition, they must stop the people, lull them to sleep, keep them consuming things so they do not upset the tea cart that the big boys are all drinking from. That is their job. And of course...
Go ahead.
When, of course, you must always take everything that you hear with a grain of salt. Do your own homework. Yes, do that. We're asking you to do that. But do the same, apply the same standard, if not more, knowing what you know about their agenda to the mainstream media. Those of you out there, or those who are listening and just imbibe what comes out of the mainstream speaker box, do not assume that information has been vetted and tested and given the seal of approval by an objective panel of experts. That information is, if not more corrupted than anything else out there.
I want to offer to the listeners yesterday, we're actually heading out of Oklahoma City, had to stop by Light Bulb Supply Incorporated in Oklahoma City. I want to give a plug to those folks. One of the gentlemen behind the counter saw my Infowars.com shirt I had on. And I'm walking out, and he says, "I like that shirt." And I thought, wow, okay. He listened to the FM station that we carry Alex's show on in Oklahoma City. And I went back, gave him a card, and he's bought the copy of the movie, had no idea who I was. There are a lot of listeners out there. I mean, that happens time and time and time again, not only with our film crew, but we're getting emails. When I lived in Australia, a huge audience for Alex's show over there.
Yeah.
And even though it's, 15, 16 hours difference, they will get up at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning and online and listen to the show. This is the real deal, folks.
Because the truth has appeal. It does. An appeal that the lie can never produce. And in that vein, we're here guest hosting the Alex Jones Show, and we will be right back after this with Stephanie Sledge of thegovernmentrag.com. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. And no, I am not Alex Jones. I am the guest host, one of the guest hosts. I am the guest co-host today, Holland Vandennieuwenhof, writer-producer for Free Mind Films, which released A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City, 1995, in December of last year, to wide acclaim and to recognition from the filmmaking community, exposing the false flag attack of Oklahoma City and deconstructing the official story. And joining me as a guest co-host today, July 27th, Friday, is Chris Emery.
Glad to have you folks along.
Chris Emery was the writer and producer for A Noble Lie, and one of the impetus for the creation of the movie in the first place. Chris Emery had been nursing this dream for years, and finally we were able to harness enough talent and resources to get it done. And here we are, guest hosting the Alex Jones Show, and it's been a long, wild ride, my friend.
Give a 30-second recap. Alex hints, and rightfully so, on divine intervention, a Christian-based and family-oriented show, and I think that's the stalwart. That's why this show is doing so well. And I could say personally that there was divine intervention on a lot of the aspects of getting our film together. Holland and I meeting, it just absolutely amazing. We quit counting how many times. It's beyond synchronicity. There was a purpose, and we pretty much just let it in the hands of the being that was there. They knew, or whatever knew, that we were doing the right thing, and it's absolutely amazing to see. After it was released, 500 would sell, then 1,000, then 1,500. I mean, the numbers just keep, it was like riding a racehorse for the first 2 weeks, just figuring out how to control the sales, going all over the world.
Exactly.
This show and this studio was the main impetus behind the fact that we were able to get that exposure in such a short amount of time, and it continues to come in. Another big order.
Well, there is an appetite for the truth. Mm-hmm. There is, and that's inspiring to be able to produce a product that tells the truth and see that there is an appetite for it. That's inspiring, and it allows us to continue in that work. Anyways, we are here talking to Stephanie Sledge. She is joining us. She is from thegovernmentrag.com, which, by the way, is an excellent news source for those of you looking for another source for daily trolling your news and figuring out what's happening to us. Thegovernmentrag.com is an excellent source. And the webmaster and head journalist, Stephanie Sledge, is here joining us. Hello, Stephanie.
Hi, Holland, and I would like to say hi to Chris as well, and I'm honored to be on the Alex Jones Show.
Thanks for joining us, Stephanie.
Anyways, you have established one of the most credible and largest bodies of work on the Tucson shooting in January of last year. That shooting left many people dead, including U.S. Representative Gabby Giffords. And also federal judge John Roll, who is not mentioned nearly as much as Gabby Giffords, although Gabby Giffords lived through her horrific injury. Judge Roll was killed, and his status as a victim is not mentioned hardly at all. When a federal judge is, in my mind, is frankly a much more crucial position than a state rep from Arizona, especially a judge who has served on the bench for decades in many crucial cases, including the Brady Bill, which it appears that this attack and others are tied into. So, Stephanie, tell the audience who you are and how you got started on the Tucson shooting.
Well, I do a lot of research, and I also do investigative journalism. I have an activism site that is called thegovernmentrag.com, and I initially looked into this because this happened in last year on January 8th of 2011, and right away I suspected that there was...
Hold on, January 8th, 11. No, I'm not big for numerology, but that's 1/8/11. That's 9/11. Right?
That's right.
Okay.
Right. 9/11 was brought up in this case several times.
Okay, let's not get too much on that, but continue.
And so I looked into this because there was a number of things. There was many eyewitness accounts and hero stories that did not add up. And, of course, the 9/11 injection and, 9/11 was literally brought to Tucson. And so I followed this case quite a bit. As I was following it, I kept notes. There were other things, too, that led me, to even look into it further, including media splicing the 911 calls that had originally been from Pima County, and, of course, just a number of things added up.
So they were actually splicing audio of the 911 calls?
Yes, they were. They took a half of one 911's caller, and they would splice it with another half to fit the storyline. And when in fact it did not. Some of the witnesses were saying that he was running north past the Walgreens, and so. And then some of them say he was tackled. So right off the bat, I knew there was something suspicious about this case. And so that led me to actually go to Tucson.
Well, I knew something was suspicious right away, not because I had heard any facts of the case. It was still breaking news, and the Pima County Sheriff was giving a news conference and talking about how politics, radical politics or right-wing politics was responsible for this. And I was thinking, you are the law enforcement official. You should be counting shell casings right now, not rendering any kind of conclusion as to motive. I don't even know the shooter's name yet, and you're telling me why this occurred, and it's to be blamed on the Tea Party and hateful politics. So right away I was like, oh, that's when my feelers went up. The fix is in. But you were bringing up eyewitness testimony, and there was eyewitness testimony of a second shooter, right? A shooter on the grassy knoll. Is that correct?
Sure. Yeah, there was eyewitness accounts according to the 911 calls that There was, in my belief, there were 3 shooters at the scene that day. Based on descriptions that the 911 calls had come out. And so immediately, I was not convinced that, this was the lone gunman. And originally they did say that...
Well, here's another thing, Stephanie. Have they released the videotape from that parking lot that was in a shopping center? Have they released any of those tapes?
No, they have not.
Well, yeah. Well, if there was just one gunman, why don't they release the videotapes? And the reason I bring this up, people, is because I have been dealing with this issue this team has for over a decade with the Oklahoma City bombing. When you have a federal building that's exploded, bombed in downtown Oklahoma City, an area that has over coverage from security cameras, and they've never released the cameras to verify or disprove the eyewitness accounts of that day, where everyone who saw Tim McVeigh step out of that Ryder truck saw him with another person. I'm not saying some reports or a majority, all of the reports place him with another person. And most of the people in the building and the seismograph data indicate, plus a host of other evidence proves that the truck bomb was not the sole cause of destruction, that the truck bomb exploding in the street was a separate event from the bombs that were going off inside the building before the truck bomb went off. And of course, you can check this evidence out in our documentary at noblelie.com, available at the info shop. But the reason I bring this up is the videotapes. Once again, we're seeing them bury the videotapes. Is that correct, Stephanie?
Well, that's correct. And also, we have not seen an ounce of footage of Jerry Lee Loeffler in a live shot. It's always been courtroom drawings or pictures that have been released by either Pima County or the Marshal's office. So we have no proof that Jerry Lee Loeffler is even real. There is some background information that has come from the court systems, and of course, his friends and what has been reported on him. But there has been no live shots or any videotapes released of this crime scene.
Yeah, it's
amazing.
And especially now with the Aurora shooting, the focus on Tucson is really going to go down because this is more recent, and there might not even be a trial. I think Jerry Lee Loeffler, the Tucson suspect, is being held in the federal mental health facility in Springfield, Missouri.
That's right.
Yeah, he's hopped up on a variety of psychotropic drugs, and if there's no trial, there's not going to be any presentation of the ballistic evidence. There's not going to be presentation of any disputing eyewitness testimony. All of that's going to go away, especially if he's found insane. So what we're looking at is a crafting of the story. And it happened from minute one when they were splicing 9/11 tapes, the media.
Right. Well, and it's not just the 911 calls that were spliced. Also, the dispatcher calls do not add up to what the heroes or any of the witnesses say. Take, for instance, on the original 911 calls, the dispatcher, on the dispatch tapes, they claim that there was no gun that was found initially at the scene, and that does not coincide with what the 5 witnesses that supposedly tackled Jared Lee Loeffler, claimed that they had took away his gun, secured the scene, but the dispatch tapes claim that an officer claims that there was no gun at the scene, that they were looking for it in the grass somewhere.
And these are actually police officer reports, not just frantic eyewitness recollections. These are officers on the scene trying to take control of a chaotic situation, and they're saying there is no gun. That's
right. These are official reports. So, and there's a lot of other things too. One of the questions that I had right away is, were the in a stand-down order, and that was based on the fact that
stand-down order on by whom, against whom?
Well, on the Congresswoman on the Corner event. Usually when there's some type of event like that where you have a Congresswoman or, any type of political rally going on like that, that there usually is some sort of
security.
Yeah, there's some sort of...
And Judge John Roll, his Marshal Service protection had been pulled the week before. The week before.
That's right.
Imagine that. And he himself may have been a target, the real target of this attack. We'll get back to that on the other side. You're listening to Stephanie Sledge on The Alex Jones Show. Welcome back to The Alex Jones Show. We are talking to Stephanie Sledge about the Tucson shooting, the anomalous evidence that has arisen out of the Tucson shooting of last year. before we went to break. And if you're calling in, ask Stephanie a question, be patient. After this segment, we will be taking callers asking Stephanie about her findings, which are fascinating, which is why we brought him here to the Alex Jones Show. And Stephanie, right before we broke, we were talking about the stand downs on security for the supposed targets of the shooting in Arizona. And this is another common thread of the false flag methodology, is you see a stand down of the security that would normally be there. And they usually stand it down right before the event. And here we have a week before the event in Tucson, the shooting, the mass shooting that injured Gabrielle Giffords and killed Judge John Roll, and he had his marshal service pulled. And there was no security for this high VIP event. I mean, this is not before the age of terror. This was in 2011. Everyone obviously knows that there are dangers out there, especially these days when there are political events, and there is no security. Is that correct, Stephanie?
Right, that is correct. And Judge John Roll, a couple of reports that come out, I haven't been able to quite pin down which one is the truth, but one of them stated that Judge John Roll had asked his marshal service protection to be removed, and another had reported that it was removed. It was just removed. So,
well, I guarantee that he did not ask, because we have two competing news releases. One of them is damage control, and obviously the good judge, cannot answer or confirm that question anymore. And so his security was pulled, and Judge John Roll had been a pivotal figure in gun rights. He was recognized by Sheriff Mack for his favorable rulings on the Brady bill. And there's not a whole lot of federal judges who can receive praise from Sheriff Mack, and one of them happens to get shot, and it's turned into a gun control event.
Well, and I found it suspicious because he was working. He had several cases that were considered to be a threat to his life that he was working on, and so I found it very interesting that his protection was pulled, as well as the fact that standard procedure for these events usually have at least one ambulance nearby, some type of police helicopter mounted somewhere, you know, in close range, also crowd control, and usually 4 to 5 police officers with some type of surveillance. So there was none of that provided at the scene, and I found that very,
this is not some
suspect.
whistle-stop tour, you know, in the 1930s Depression era where a gubernatorial candidate is shaking hands with local farmers. This was a announced event in the during the War on Terror. Every agency, and this was a large town, Tucson, has contingency plans, and it appears that it was just a 911 response, that there was nothing in place. Right,
that's absolutely correct. And other things, too, that came about that made me, you know, really look into this a little bit further is, you know, there was a lot of photos that were released of the crime scene, but when I went out there, a lot of the photos didn't match the crime scene. And
you've been on the scene. You're not just an internet sleuth. You went out there, and I know Andrew Griffin, whom we had early on, he went out there.
He was out there last year.
And so you're saying you went there and actually walked the ground. And
I did.
And the photos do not match up.
Some of them do, and some of them don't. There are some that have been released. The backgrounds do not match like the actual crime scene, and so you know that led me to look into it a little bit further. And also, too, you know, there's a lot of other things that didn't add up, like how many bullets were actually, you know, fired that are inconsistent with the autopsy reports, victims, witnesses at the scene that say
we mentioned RFK earlier. RFK had come up. Sirhan related to this. Obviously, you have the mind control. I mean, and with Sirhan, his own psychologist said that he was a hypnotized patsy. Every psychiatrist who treated him was amazed at how easy it was to hypnotize this man. It was very indicative of large-scale, prior, deep hypnosis. And Sirhan later claimed, of course, and to this day, that he has no memory of what actually happened in that pantry. And then now we have another correlation, the number of bullets. The number of bullets shell casings found at the scene in the pantry in L.A. where RFK was killed exceeded the capacity of Sirhan's gun. And now we're looking at Tucson, and once again, we have too many bullets.
Well, and the accuracy rate that Jared Lee Loughner allegedly had was 100%. I mean, he, you know, allegedly shot they initially
The super
reported that
soldier, yes.
Like Nick Bryan in Australia.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. We see this time and time again, these outlandish notions passed off as reality, managed by the mainstream media, splicing tapes together, giving us fake photos. What's that for, folks? What are they hiding? You're listening to The Alex Jones Show. We'll be right back after this. Showdown at high noon on The Alex Jones Show. I'm guest hosting Holland Vandennieuwenhof, joined by
Chris Emery with Free Mind Films out of Oklahoma City. We're glad to be here.
And our guest is Stephanie Sledge, and we're getting callers on the line, and we will get to you in just a minute or two. I know this information, this is fascinating, and you want to ask Stephanie yourself, so just in a couple seconds, we'll start bringing the callers on board to ask Stephanie your questions. And just before we went to break, we were talking about the fact that the number of shell casings, the evidence is not matching up with the official story of the Tucson shooting. Before we go to callers, Stephanie, and we just touched the tip of the iceberg of the evidence that you have on the governmentrag.com. But let's talk about the correlations to the recent shooting in Colorado. What do you see similar happening in Colorado that you have unearthed yourself in Tucson? Hello, Stephanie.
Okay. It's like we may have...
Well, we got it. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
The first, sorry, I don't know what happened. There was a cutout. The first similarity that I found was the fact that there was a gag order put in place, which is very common with these false flags. The first thing is the gag order, and so nobody's allowed to talk, and so that, you know, conditions the populace that, well,
but yet the media is allowed to make all the conjecture and lies they want. It's just the principals involved who may be speaking on true evidence. They're not allowed to talk. Is that correct?
That's right. And there are other things that are very similar that I found as far as agenda is concerned. First of all, everything always starts out with something negative with the shooter, like dressed in black, or something that coincides with an agenda. And of course, we know after the Tucson shooting that a lot of the agenda that's being pushed through is not only just about gun control, but it's also about taking away our freedom of rights and our freedom of expression. And so, you know, terrorists have been listed as wearing all black, black hoodies, a number of things. So there's a lot of that has a lot of similarities.
Yeah, and also I noticed the commonality of the extended clip, or, you know, what they incorrectly call it. It's a magazine,
right, the
for people. It's a magazine. The extended magazine debate, which goes back to the Brady Bill, which was a limitation on magazine capacity of rifles and pistols that was in place for 10 years in this country, expired just a couple years ago. And they were really sorry that provision expired. But that's the only way they could get it passed because of the strength, the support for the Second Amendment in this country. And now we see in both shootings the use of an extended magazine, which of course is the Brady argument. And then we have one of the targets killed in Tucson was a judge who had ruled favorably for gun rights back in the 90s on the Brady Bill. So I think what we're seeing is this implanting of and they're already talking about how military arms should not be in the hands of American citizens on the streets. These are not military arms. And when extended magazines are no advantage, they are largely a gimmick. And in fact, in the Colorado shooting, the extended magazine failed, which is why he had to go to a secondary weapon. But it's not about the real lethality of an extended magazine. It's about demonizing large capacity weapons, which means going back to the Brady provisions. And if extended magazines were any more effective, any more lethal than a regular magazine, you would see the military using them. But they do not, because they confer no advantage. The people who are using them on a daily basis to defend themselves and to shoot people do not use extended magazines because it offers no advantage. So the argument is without worth and points towards the true agenda, which is using Brady-like provisions to limit gun rights. But before we go to callers, there's one more point I really need to break up. Another agenda at play here was research into, am I correct, suspended animation.
Right. That was the medical agenda behind the scenes of the Tucson shooting. And suspended animation was quite interesting to study because I personally had never heard of it before I had started this case. And so I looked into exactly when the news broke that they had performed a procedure called suspended animation. I immediately thought in my head that this goes deep, so I'm going to look into it. And what I found
And this was on
that
Gabby Giffords, who survived her gun wound to the head because somehow they were able to keep her afloat through suspended animation, slowing down her bodily functions. Is that correct?
That's right. It's a cooling process is what it is. There's a long description for it, but the short description is basically where your soul is suspended. You're neither dead nor alive. You're just suspended. So, and I found a lot of interesting agenda coming out through the University of Arizona, and a lot of the doctors that were that performed the surgery have a lot of very deep ties into the military as well as.
Oh, well, let's not forget also that Gabby Giffords, as we were all reminded time and time again, was married to an astronaut who worked for NASA, and of course, any agency more than any other who would be interested in a suspended animation research would be NASA. Of course, for interstellar travel or for deep space travel as portrayed in science fiction movies. Maybe if we actually want to send a man to Mars, we will use suspended animation, at least to Jupiter.
Well, and an interesting point about NASA and suspended animation is following the shooting, NASA did capture, I don't have those notes in front of me, but I believe they captured dark matter using suspended animation. And what they're using it for is, just like the movie Angels and Demons, it's like a crystal ball. And so they're able to see the future with it. And, of course, it also, the Brain Trauma Foundation, which, is George Soros, and it leads to the Open Society Institute and all that, ties back to these Peace Corps and, Dr. Peter Reed, who performed the procedure. Is
well, I mean, all you got to do,
and
you have done it, Stephanie, I highly advise those of you listening and watching to check out the governmentrag.com to chase down these leads that she has presented. The links are tremendous. And just like the Colorado shooting, here we have the introduction of the notion of suspended animation. There's not a whole lot of people involved in suspended animation work who are married to NASA astronauts, but they just happen to get shot in the head in Tucson, Arizona.
Yeah, the probability is extra.
And they use suspended animation. Anyways, we're going to start taking. Hold on, Steph. We're going to start taking callers in a second. For those of you listening, the call-in number is 1-800-259-9231. I repeat, 800-259-9231. And go ahead, Stephanie, wrap up, and then we're going to hit the callers.
As far as what DARPA wanted, you have to understand that following the shooting, the FDA did approve suspended animation, and the Army funded research projects into suspended animation, including DARPA has an interest in it too, and they are performing procedures that involve.
So that agenda was fulfilled. Getting these deep pockets to fund the suspended animation research. So
that's right.
That is fascinating, and I highly advise anyone listening to look into that. Look at thegovernmentrag.com, and we're going to callers right now because I know this information. I know they have a lot of questions for Stephanie. First caller is Julio from Illinois. Julio, do you have a question or comment for our guest?
Well, I do. I interviewed Wayne Madsen. I think it was maybe a couple of months or a couple of weeks after the shooting in Arizona, and he had linked Judge Roll as well to, I believe it was Judge Roll, Gabrielle Giffords, and another congressman from Texas were all exchanging notes to one another, and they were going to get set to, I think Gabrielle Giffords was going to get set to expose what was going on in Arizona linked to Operation Fast and Furious. And you guys were just mentioning about the videos, no CCTV cameras released, and I highly doubt CCTV cameras will be released in Colorado from the shooting. Supposedly this Holmes man went into the theater, correct, bought a ticket, and supposedly he left the emergency exits. Well, in this police state country that we live in, there are cameras all over the place. And
yeah,
I saw Batman. I saw Batman on Monday, and I made a note to look where cameras were located in this movie theater. I'm from the suburbs of Chicago, and there are cameras all over the place. So imagine a suburb of Denver near an Air Force base. There should be cameras everywhere.
Yeah, and like I said, in Aurora, where there's already heavy police state presence. Stephanie, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I would like to say, too, that I do agree with Wayne Madsen's report about the fact that the ATF, they were going to expose that, and so that seems to be coming up, and it goes along with gun control.
Yeah, and Fast and Furious, of course, was the bone of contention when it came to the gun control debate. Fast and Furious blew up in their face, and gun control had no traction. And because of the Colorado shooting, that argument maybe has been tossed aside, and there may be solid concrete links between the victims involved in the Tucson shooting the year before and Fast and Furious. And that's not too much of a stretch. Fast and Furious has already killed 2,000 people, half a dozen U.S. cops. So what's a couple more important people?
And I do want to say too that the ATF did admit that they denied that Jared Lee Loughner's gun was involved in Fast and Furious, but yet they admitted that they were worried about it. So they haven't admitted, but they haven't denied either. So that's still under investigation, and I'm following the court documents on that.
Yeah, excellent. Julio, do you have anything else?
Yes, I do. I've been reading documents from New Jersey's Fusion Center, Homeland Security documents now. I even saw TSA documents where they're admitting that now even videotaping at a large gathering could be suspicious activity. And it's no surprise that Michael Chertoff has his nose around this whole TSA.
Oh yeah. He's already on the news talking about pre-delinquent crime and how we're going to need the naked body scanners everywhere. Naked body scanners, by the way, which he owns a piece of course, that's just another coincidence. It has nothing to do with the agenda that's at play here. I mean, I remember the day after 9/11 when I lived in Austin, I went to the movies, and there was a police officer outside the movie theater, and I had dropped my girlfriend at the time off to buy tickets while I parked, and he asked me to move on, to not park in front of the movie theater. So there has been an emphasis on theaters in the war on terror, literally since day one. So we're probably, and frankly, I mean, we may see naked body scanners at the movie theaters, and because of this, people are just not going to object. Julio, I thank you for calling in. We got to move on. Mark from Arizona, do you have a question or comment for our guest?
Well, hello, Stephanie. You know who I am. I went out to the sites here in Tucson with Stephanie, and I can personally attest that I witnessed a few bizarre things myself. One of the things I noticed was one of the Pima County Sheriff deputies that were pictured on one of the crime scene photos is connected to the Pablo Escobar drug cartel down in, where's that, Mexico, I believe?
No, that's was in Colombia. Stephanie, can you verify this?
I cannot verify that, but I do have information that there is a person that verifies that the man that was in the photo, even though we know that photo of the Escobar killing was photoshopped by the blood on, you know, they showed the same blood on the same stone many times, so we know it's been tampered with, but there is information that he was in town for a 24-hour period the day of the shooting.
In town? Are you talking about Tucson?
Yes.
Who was in town?
His first name is Armando. I don't have the name, but
okay.
He's listed as Armando, and that's unconfirmed at this point. I'm still looking into that.
Okay. Well, there's plenty of stuff out there that you have confirmed that we can pin down. I thank you for calling, Mark. We're going next to Steve. Steve from Massachusetts. Do you have a question or comment for our guest?
Yeah, I was just wanting to mention this is selective, media targeting. They want to target all lawful gun owners. When you see it in Albany, I'm living in Massachusetts, but in Albany, I met this guy, and he was out of Roy Rogers, and he's like, yeah, they caught the guys. And I'm like, well, what's going on here? Because, yeah, someone shot, he was sitting on his porch, and some teenagers, they shot him with a gun in the head. He had an eye patch. I was kind of a little bit surprised that this guy was alive, and he only had an eye patch. He got shot in the head, and he was just sitting on his porch. And so as I heard the story, he told me, yeah, they caught them because they shot a postal worker, and then they caught the kids. And then when I got home, I researched it. I found a tiny little article mentioning it. It didn't mention this gentleman, which happened months earlier, but there's no media attention to it. I'm even scrubbing to look for it, and that's a pretty major thing. You're sitting in Albany on the porch. I don't care what neighborhood you're in, and some teenage kids, it was a hate crime. They're shooting white people is what they were doing.
Wow. Well, it did not serve an agenda. Meanwhile, you see a local shooting in another state that is receiving the comment and editorial from the office of the President of the United States of America, which obviously means that there is an agenda at work. Thank you for calling. We have to move on to the next caller. Jim from Minnesota. Jim, do you have a question or comment for our guest, Stephanie Sledge?
Yeah, hello.
Yes, you are on air.
Am I on?
Yes, you are, sir.
I am just wondering if anybody has given any thought to the idea that scalar weapons were used and/or mind control at a distance. If these people had had any handlers.
Well, Stephanie, I believe that this story is not finished, and one cannot rule anything out. But you start from the most provable piece of evidence first, and you expand outward from there as far as the strength of the evidence can take you. And do you have anything to comment on that, Stephanie?
Well, I do. As far as any type of scalar weapons and all that, I have been looking into that too. I do know there's a couple of agencies that have close ties to the shooting. One is the RAND Corporation. Also, Raytheon has come up, as well as the Hess Corporation. And so at this point, you know, I'm still looking into those leads right now, but I do know that as far as the RAND Corporation, you know, they're close ties to the FEMA region out there.
Well, the RAND Corporation is a think tank for the Defense Department and the CIA. They have done that from the beginning. That's their primary purpose, that they produce policy papers for intelligence and deep state events and the military. And if RAND is involved in this, that definitely means there's an agenda at work.
Absolutely. And also, too, I'd like to back up a little bit and address the caller that talked about the TSA. There is a fact sheet that was released by the TSA. It's called the Inner City Bus Security Grant Program, and it did list projects that were eligible for funding. And in those projects, it did list, and I believe it's number 4 on the list, the conducting live or simulated drills. So, I mean, these can go live at any moment, and this is an example of one of those live drills.
Exactly. That's another sign of the methodology of the false flag attack, is these concurrent drills, military intelligence, police exercises. This is how they move the assets in place. This is how they execute the crime. And then it's also the method of cover-up, because it's compartmentalized. Everyone says, oh, it's just a drill. It wasn't the real thing. Anyways, you're listening to the Alex Jones Show. We'll be right back. We're still taking calls on the shooting and the recent one in Colorado. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. We are talking to Stephanie Sledge in this final segment of this hour. We just got a last-minute surprise guest for the next hour, which we'll be moving to. I'll tell you about it after this. But we're taking callers talking about the Tucson shooting and correlations to the shooting in Colorado. Let's go to Alicia in PA. Alicia, can you hear? Do you have a question or comment for our guest, Stephanie?
Hello?
Elijah.
Hello?
Elijah
Yes.
in PA. Do you have a question or comment?
You have a question. When I was in the military, 82nd Airborne, you don't just go and pick up munitions and, booby trap bombs. And, it takes training, and even then, years of experience, where it took experts, a day, 2 days to take those booby traps apart.
Yeah, you're talking about the Aurora shooting. Yes, go ahead.
No one's talking about that. It would take experts, probably more than one, to set up, booby traps that are that complicated. This boy had no background in anything like that. He had no background in guns.
Well, yeah, he did not come from a shooting background, so the shooting in the theater is problematic. But, there are a lot of things that you can discover on the internet, and by all accounts, this kid was a bright kid. By all accounts, he was pretty smart, and he was a science whiz. And he did tell the police officers about the booby traps in his apartment. But yes, that could be problematic, and we do need to look at the sophistication of the man traps that he put up in his apartment, see if it was beyond his capability or any of the capability that he could have got from any other resources. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, I don't know if you're in the military or not, but
I used to be in the Marines, in Marine Infantry, yes. I worked with explosive demolitions.
Yeah, well, that, C4, C3, whatever it is, you can read all you want. You're not going to be able to set up stuff that complicated to where you got experts going in there. That would be beyond something you learn on the internet. You'd probably blow yourself up trying to do that, you know, and he's in an apartment building. But anyway, that's all I had to say. The whole thing stinks.
Oh, it stinks to high heaven. High heaven.
Some great points, Elijah. That's what we ran across in the Oklahoma City case. When you look at the funding, the expertise, the level of training needed, and that was one of the first underpinnings that fell out immediately when the official narrative came out, and then you actually did reverse engineering, and we saw what it would take to actually put something like this together, and it absolutely no correlation. It was a complete mismatch.
Oh, yeah.
We were into something immediately.
It was an unreal hypothesis. Thank you for calling. We must go to the next caller. We're talking to Denise in Virginia. Denise, do you have a question or comment for Stephanie Sledge?
I have a comment. It's a little off topic, if you guys would just bear with me.
Make it quick. We have about 2 minutes.
I've been trying to wake up my son in San Diego because he was calling me and telling me that he is seeing so much happen so rapidly. You know, I said, keep your eyes open. He said that he visits surfing spots, and he's never seen anything but maybe a ticket, kind of a police guy. And he said now all of a sudden he sees these 3 and 4 policemen in combat gear. He said they're 6'4", 6'5", they're huge on every corner now. He said that's happening. And then today,
unless there's going to be a mass shooting there, of course.
FSA has ordered, it's in their newspaper, the San Diego newspaper, the FSA has ordered 150 units of riot gear to be delivered in 15 days. He said this stuff is unveiling so fast that they can hardly keep up with it.
Exactly. Stephanie, give the audience your information, please, before we leave.
Well, I'm taking pre-orders for my report right now, which is about 400 pages, color photos of the investigation. You can go to the governmentrag.com, click on the top left-hand side that states investigations, and you can read about it there, and you can pre-order the report and get the word out.
Exactly. Thank you for joining us. This is not Alex Jones, but it is the Alex Jones Show. I am the guest co-host today, Friday, July 27th, 2012. I am Holland Vandennieuwenhof, writer and producer for Free Mind Films, which released A Noble Lie late last year. I also have a little show of my own called The Free Mind Report. You can check that out on the Logos Radio Network or freemindreport.com. It's on Monday nights, 6 to 8 p.m. Central. And I give a take on topical issues unvarnished by fear of embarrassing anyone but myself. It is Holland Unplugged, some say, for better or worse. And joining me is my very, very good friend, longtime companion in truth, brother in arms, some can say, Chris Emery.
Yes, it's an honor to be here. I want to thank Alex and his staff for having us down. This is a first for us. We were asked to actually host the show after our guest appearance on his show this past Tuesday, I believe. So this is quite an honor, and we're very honored to have you as the listeners joining us and the viewers on Prison Planet TV. Got a lot of information to cover, and we've got another dynamite guest coming up.
Yes, a last-minute surprise guest, and they just got off a plane, but it's going to be Julia Davis. Julia Davis writes for The Examiner. She is a former Homeland Security agent. She joined the Homeland Security Department not long after 9/11 for patriotic reasons. She wanted to serve her country, protect her country. But once she started reporting on corruption within the department that endangered American lives, what she saw and experienced were the guns of Homeland Security being turned on her. And I'm pretty jaded when it comes to police state abuse, scandal, government malfeasance. Not much shocks me. Her story shocked me. The depth of the depravity and the resources they used to smear, to destroy this woman and her husband, B.J. Davis, and the rest of her family, to the extent of killing witnesses, most likely. Julia Davis has exposed this. Unfortunately for her persecutors in Homeland Security, Julia Davis's husband and she herself, they both work in the professional movie industry out of Hollywood. B.J. Davis, her husband, is a longtime Hollywood producer. He got his start out as a eminent stuntman. In fact, a couple of the stunt records that he set are still in place. In fact, one man who tried to break them died in that attempt. And Julia Davis herself has worked on many Hollywood productions. So they had the experience and the training and the know-how to expose what had happened to them. And they are currently on the road promoting their own documentary about their experiences called Top Priority, The Enemy Within. It just premiered in L.A. and in New York City, and it's in the running for the Academy Awards, my friends. And that is no lark. Many controversial and hard-hitting documentaries have scored at the Oscars, including The Panama Deception, Waco, The New Revelation, and others. So hopefully that spirit still exists. That exposure can be paid to this work, and Julie will be joining us on the other side of this to talk about that. And like I said, I am jaded when it comes to this stuff. Not much surprises me. I may raise an eyebrow. With Julia's story, and it's verified, it is truly shocking. And what scares me is that this is not the first time they've come to these depths.
They are turning Hollywood upside down, I think, in a good way. It shows the credibility and the integrity of two professional filmmakers that have been in the business for years. We look up to these folks. They are basically our idols in a lot of ways. The quality, the bravery, and so forth, and we're looking forward to having her on.
Exactly. Julia Davis will be joining us on the other side. You're listening to The Alex Jones Show. Guest hosting, Holland Vandennieuwenhof and Chris Emery. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. This is Holland Vandennieuwenhof. We have our guest on the line. We really have worked with Julia Davis, worked with her for a long time, and her story, like I said, is shocking. A former Homeland Security agent, married to B.J. Davis, a Hollywood producer, and she was subjected to, in my mind, an unprecedented amount of persecution and harassment by the Department of Homeland Security simply for trying to maintain her fidelity to her duty. Julia Davis, welcome to the Alex Jones Show.
Thank you so much. It's my honor to be here.
Now, you have been reporting on a number of issues, but you're just not a reporter. You have experienced, been on the front lines, had your life threatened because of information you possessed that was deemed dangerous by the establishment. Why don't you tell the audience how this started?
I went into work for the Department of Homeland Security after 9/11, and I was starry-eyed and very naive. I wanted to help protect the nation from the terrorist threat, and when I tried to do exactly that, I've encountered retaliation that I could have never imagined happening in this great country. And I'm sure most patriots, even those that know of the atrocious things that are being done to whistleblowers, would probably be surprised at the kind of retaliation that I've encountered.
Shocked. I mean, it's hard to exaggerate.
Working at the largest and busiest land border crossing in the United States and in the world, San Ysidro port of entry. And we had very specific intelligence alerts that Al-Qaeda was planning to penetrate the land borders between the U.S. and Mexico on national holidays. And the date of special importance, we were told, would be 4th of July, 2004, Independence Day. And on that date, 23 people from special interest countries, which are terrorist countries, have been allowed to enter the United States without being enrolled into any databases that they were supposed to be enrolled in, without their documents being copied, without their fingerprints being taken.
Well, they just walked across the border?
Extremely suspicious, and when I reported this event to the local port director, he told me to take it to Intel. When I went to Intel, I was surprised to see that on this date of heightened security alert, all Intel workers were given a day off and the office was closed. So I was told to just turn in the paperwork and they would get to it when they get to it. But our manual said that whenever anything that could be remotely related to terrorism was taking place, we were to notify Joint Terrorism Task Force. And that's exactly what I did. And once I made a report to the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, my life was never the same. I was declared a domestic terrorist. My home was raided with a Black Hawk helicopter and a special response team. My husband and I have been twice falsely arrested and imprisoned and had to fight for years to clear our name and to have Department of Homeland Security held accountable for their actions.
Yes, and they actually launched a ridiculous number of investigations on you while you were still working for Homeland Security. Is that correct?
That's correct. They started with 19 investigations while I was still working for Homeland Security, and then once I was subjected to such a retaliation that working there was no longer feasible, they continued to investigate me even after I involuntarily resigned. So a total number of investigations that we are aware of is 54.
54 investigations against one person, and it's literally for doing your job, for reporting on a unprecedented breach of security where all these people from suspicious countries, when a heightened terror alert wasn't placed dealing specifically with the nature of this breach, when this breach occurred and you reported it, they went after you because you made them look bad.
Exactly, and my report about people from terrorist countries entering without requisite procedures being followed was closed the same day with no action and no investigation.
So that investigation that should have taken place on why 23 people from suspected countries were just be able to walk through the border without any kind of background check that was required. They closed that after one day, but they, for weeks and months, conducted 54 investigations against you, one of their own, for doing your duty, for trying to report on this. It's amazing, and it shows you how depraved and where the priorities of Homeland Security are. Now, you mentioned, of course, that it actually came down to them raiding your home and, no exaggeration, landing a helicopter on your front lawn. Why don't you get into that?
Yes, after I had resigned from Homeland Security, I knew that what was done to me was unjust, so I filed a case against Homeland Security in the Equal Employment Opportunities Commission court, and there was a ruling in my favor that said that no reasonable person would have been able to continue working there under such circumstances, and that my resignation was involuntary and was caused by Department of Homeland Security's illegal conduct against me. So 2 weeks after I won this case against Homeland Security, they land a Black Hawk helicopter.
And this is caught on tape. This is literally caught on tape.
Exactly. Our neighbor, Matthew Judd, saw this was happening and stepped out of his home and started filming the raid with his camera. And at one point during the raid, he actually realized that the agents have noticed them being filmed. And he said on camera, "Oh no, they saw me." And he walked into the house but continued filming through his window. And yes, he did videotape the raid where a Black Hawk helicopter had landed by our home, and 27 men, special response team and other agents, 27 Homeland Security agents and 1 U.S. Marshal. They have surrounded the residence. They had broken down one door. They had stormed it from all directions. It was a commando-style operation.
And mind you, you weren't living in Pakistan. They could have driven up to your driveway in a car and knocked on the door and said, "Hey, I have a warrant and I'm here to search your premises. Can you please have a seat in the living room while we conduct a search?" No, they didn't do that because, well, first of all, you and BJ are not dangerous terrorists. You're citizens. BJ served his country as a Marine in Vietnam. 30 years later, he has his own government landing on his lawn in a Black Hawk helicopter, waving guns around, and they actually may have played a role in your own father's death. Is that correct, Julia?
That's correct. And they actually didn't even have a search warrant, but they stayed in our house for about 2 hours, close to 2 hours, searching it without a search warrant. And they they knew before the raid that my dad had a heart condition because they had already pulled up my parents' immigration files, because not only did they plan to denaturalize and deport me, but they were already planning to also deport my parents, which were completely innocent victims in all of this. And so when they arrived to the house, my dad walked out and asked them what is going on here, and he was attacked by several special response team agents with assault weapons who threw him down to the ground with such a force that they broke his finger. They handcuffed him and they dragged him down a tall set of steps in front of the house. They dragged him away from the house, and this is Palm Springs area. At the heat of the summer, about 114 to 117 degrees. My dad is wearing nothing but his boxer shorts. And when he's asking them what's going on, they tell him, your daughter is a domestic terrorist. So in his mind, he's thinking, if they're doing this, then what is happening to her? Is she being taken to Guantanamo right now?
And your father was an immigrant from the Ukraine, is that correct?
Yes, exactly.
He had lived under a communist dictatorship. He came to this country to escape such things, and now we've reached the state of affairs where he's being dragged out of his house in America, in California, in Palm Springs, by the secret police, being tossed around and abused because of a political witch hunt.
Exactly, and they had no warrant and no right to lay one finger on him, much less to handcuff him and detain him completely illegally and keep him in the full desert sun. And my dad was having chest pains. You can imagine anyone with a heart condition being put through this kind of an ordeal would be pretty much guaranteed to have a heart attack. And my dad knew he was having a heart attack. He was telling the agents that were holding him down, I'm having a heart attack, I need to take my medication, I need to get back into the house, I need water and medicine, I need medical attention. He could see there was an ambulance stationed right across the street, that they brought it there for protocol for this raid. But instead of letting him have water and medication, which they refused to, they had actually radioed the ambulance and told them they were no longer needed and sent them away. We obtained the radio logs from the sheriff's department that show all this happening. So my dad had an untreated heart attack because of all of this, and he didn't live much longer because of this kind of brutal mistreatment, and the agents knew how close I was to my father.
This wasn't negligence. This wasn't incompetence. They knew what they were doing. They knew exactly who they were raiding. They knew who was in the house. They knew their health conditions. They knew their medical conditions. They literally told the ambulance to go away after an elderly man complains of having a heart attack. They murdered your father, Julia. I know you know that, but they did. I hope the audience understands that Homeland Security, out of a perverse sense of retribution, decided to murder an elderly man just to satisfy a political agenda. I'm sorry, callers. We're going to be sticking to Julia's story. We'll be right back after this. You're listening to The Alex Jones Show. Welcome back to The Alex Jones Show. This is Holland Vandennieuwenhof. We're talking to Julia Davis. Stay tuned after this. Actually, after we talk to Julia, we have a clip from last night's show. Larry Pratt of Gun Owners of America talking about the Colorado shooting and his take on what he thinks that the fix may be in on the horror in Aurora. Then we'll be playing that clip after we talk to Julia. Callers, I am sorry, I apologize, but we have a fire hose of information for you today, and we're unleashing, we're opening up the faucet, we're tearing the faucet out of the wall, and we are here to present this information. We got Julia Davis on the line, her documentary documenting her story. Top priority, the enemy within. This story sounds outrageous. I know. It is outrageous. We know that. But it is on tape. It is documented. And Homeland Security, they messed with the wrong people. Because Julia and BJ, they had the will and the determination to clear their name and to fight back. But Julia, we were talking about how Homeland Security basically conspired and succeeded in murdering your father. But those aren't the only people. You were talking about the witness who filmed the raid on your house, the footage which you feature in your documentary. He later died of mysterious circumstances. Is that correct?
Yes, the very neighbor who filmed the raid, who realized that the agents noticed him during the filming, he was extremely terrified of the situation. And when he finally came to me with the tape, he was literally shaking. He said he was very worried about handing it over, but finally decided to do it because it was the right thing to do. And he wrote a statement where he also described what he witnessed, described the agents taking boxes out of the house when they didn't even have a search warrant, and they later tried to deny taking things. And only weeks after turning the tape over to us, the neighbor, Matthew Judd, who was only 25 years old, was suddenly found dead in his home. And he was alone and just found on his couch. And years later, there still hadn't been a proper investigation. His death certificate says that the disposition is pending, and there is no coherent explanation as to what exactly happened to this young man.
Like I said, this story is documented in the movie that you just premiered in L.A., is that correct?
Yes, we started our theatrical release in New York, and then it was followed by Los Angeles, and we just finished that portion of the theatrical rollout.
Exactly, because this is going to the big screens. This is, the big boys are going to see this, and this is great because y'all had the connections, y'all had the willpower, you had the means and the tools and the willpower to make this movie and put it out there for people to see what this government is capable of. Julia, we only have about 2 minutes. I'm sorry, but we need to get to another crucial point of your story, is the death of Brittany Murphy. Was her death related to your case?
It possibly could have been because Brittany was named as a witness in my case. One of the 54 investigations against me included Department of Homeland Security claiming that Brittany Murphy told them that I was working on a film with my husband during the same time when I was working for Homeland Security. And Brittany confirmed that that was a lie, that she never made such a statement. And as soon as she refuted Homeland Security's allegations, her life became a living nightmare.
And she reported this to the Hollywood press, that she was being followed, that helicopters were following her, and they mocked her. And then she died under very mysterious circumstances. A healthy young actress. God knows Hollywood stars have a very low shelf life, but she was not involved in the lifestyle that would attribute to that. And she winds up dead, and so does her husband.
Yes, because she reported to the Hollywood Reporter, which printed a story called The Less Difficult Days of Brittany Murphy. She had told Alex Van Block of the Hollywood Reporter that she was being followed by helicopters and is wiretapped, and she was made fun of and called paranoid or being on drugs, and had lost jobs because of that, and her career had spiraled out of control. The Homeland Security tried to deport her husband just the way they tried to deport me. And there are a lot of similarities. The same office of ICE, also from San Diego.
Immigration Customs Enforcement.
Exactly, Immigration Customs Enforcement. And they had also were planning to bring marriage fraud charges against Brittany and Simon, that we recently found that out through FOIA requests. So the similarities are endless. So even after they tried to deport her husband, that wasn't over yet. The Homeland Security was still planning to bring more charges.
Julia, this story is outrageous, and people need to see it. Where can they check out your documentary?
Please visit topprioritymovie.com. That's our official website. That's topprioritymovie.com. And we'll be posting more information there as we continue to premiere the film across the country.
We'll be right back after this. Thank you, Julia. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I am a guest co-host, Holland Vandennieuwenhof, joined by
Chris Emery, Free Mind Films, Oklahoma City.
We are from Free Mind Films in Oklahoma City, writers, producers for A Noble Lie, the documentary which you can catch in the info shop about the Oklahoma City bombing. We've had a number of fascinating guests on today. Andrew Griffin, Stephanie Sledge, and we topped it off with Julia Davis, a much too short interview. In the future, we will have her on again to expand on that story. It is indeed fascinating. Callers, we will be getting to you in just a couple minutes. There are a couple clips and a couple topics that we have to cover, very topical, before we bid farewell today. First of all, Larry Pratt was on the Alex Jones Show last night. Larry Pratt of Gun Owners of America. For those of you who don't know, GOA is the only no-compromise gun lobby working in Congress to preserve your gun rights. Now, you can give the NRA some credit, but you can't give it too much, and you can criticize the NRA a lot for caving on a lot of crucial gun control legislation, compromising where compromise was not needed nor necessary. Some have even accused the NRA of being kind of the gatekeepers of the money that goes to fund gun rights in this country. But if anything, the GOA is the real deal. If you want to know compromise gun lobby, look up GOA, look up Larry Pratt, the longtime head. He was on Alex Jones Show last night, and he's saying, and Larry Pratt's a pretty mainstream guy, and he put his neck out there. He's saying that Colorado is fishy. Guys, let's go to that clip. Let's review what Larry Pratt had to say.
A week later in the aftermath, what is the intel you've got on this shooting in Colorado? Am I wrong for being suspicious?
I don't think you're wrong. I would have disagreed with you before Fast and Furious because I never in my wildest fears would have thought that our government would actually premeditatedly kill some 400 Mexicans have been murdered and a couple of our U.S. agents. So after we caught them planning premeditatedly for a program that would get people murdered, one of the whistleblowers submitted a report on weekly briefings at ATF. And when the head of the ATF at the time would be given the increase in body counts in Mexico, he would say things like, good, the program's working. Well, so this was no mistake. This was not a sting operation gone bad. This was premeditated murder. Well, if our government would do that, then even though I think the evil of the human heart is sufficient to account for somebody that wants to go and shoot people at random, since we've been keeping records in this country, this has happened every few years since the 1870s. 10, 20, 30 people being murdered at a time. By the way, long before semi-automatics were available to people. So this is what human beings are capable of. And now we have to admit that maybe this is something that our government is capable of, because this is only 12 people murdered. They were good for 400 in Fast and Furious. Wow.
That was
well said. I've seen
That was Larry Pratt on the Alex Jones Show last night, PresidentPlanet.tv. And he has a very good point. Fast and Furious exposes the depravity of this government. If what we've presented on the show isn't enough, look at least what's being covered to some extent in the mainstream media. Fast and Furious, Chris.
Fast and Furious, boy, there's Eric Holder, affiliated with the Oklahoma City case, covered up, and his entourage and his office staff covered up the Kenny Trinity murder, brutal torture murder.
We talk about that in A Noble Lie, the murder of Kenny Trinity. Eric Holder made his bones covering that up, and now he's in charge of Fast and Furious.
The very same gun shop in Arizona that actually tried to get a case out which preceded Fast and Furious in Arizona. Jesse Trinity, Kenny's brother, found this out through FOIA requests and documents that it's the same gun shop in 1995. They tried to pull that stunt. Didn't work. Weren't able to get the resources together, and they finally made it work, in the last 4 years. You have Border Patrol agents, innocent civilians on both sides of the border, brutally murdered with weapons that the United States government shipped into Mexico to have at the hands of disposable of gangs and Mexican drug cartels. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and you have Larry Pratt saying this is not a sting gone bad. There is no way to account for weapons after they go across the border, and they're shipping them across the border. And the emails from the prosecutor's office of the Arizona Federal Prosecutor's Office have come out, and they are openly saying they are going to use the gun violence that is being fanned by the weapons from Fast and Furious to push for more restrictions on long gun purchases in America. By definition, in their own words, a false flag attack, precipitating, executing mass murder to fulfill a political agenda.
Put this in context, people. You have Eric Holder, our Attorney General. He was a deputy attorney general in Oklahoma City, and there is no love lost between our film crew and this animal for what he did in Oklahoma City on that case. That's not even up for debate anymore. Then you have Hillary Clinton, our Secretary of State, and President Calderon from Mexico, knowing full well that this operation was going down, calling for the ban of guns in the United States when it had nothing to do with it. That it doesn't get any more insidious than that.
Yeah, and the argument's ridiculous in itself because Mexico, the country, has some of the strictest gun control restrictions on the planet. In fact, it's in their constitution that citizens are now not allowed to own a firearm more powerful than that used by the police or military. So at least they're very apparent in their purpose of gun control that literally the citizens cannot fight back. Yet we have open warfare on the streets of the border towns in Mexico, largely fanned by the largest gun smuggler in American history, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. And applying that standard to what's happening in Colorado, we cannot put anything past this government. And that is even seeping over into the mainstream. Fox News covered this to some extent. Some of the questions they have about the incident in Colorado, the horror in Aurora. Do we have that clip up and ready? Excellent. If we do, let's play it any time. Do we have it? Okay. We'll play it as soon as it's ready. Here we go.
Emergency crews hadn't left the scene of the Colorado theater shooting before a lot of lawmakers, politicians, and members of the media were already asking questions about how gun laws have to change. But what questions about the shooting are the media not asking? Ben has the reality check you won't see anywhere else.
We're going to look at this debate from two angles. Tonight, part one, the questions the national media aren't asking. I don't need to go into a lot of details on this shooting because most every American is familiar with the basics. Police say 24-year-old James Holmes went into that theater in Aurora, Colorado. He was dressed in black, wearing a tactical helmet, vest, and leggings, as well as throat and groin protectors. Police say Holmes used an AR-15 assault rifle, a Remington shotgun, and a .40 caliber Glock handgun during that attack. And police say they found a second .40 caliber Glock inside of his car. The question being asked, how could he be allowed to buy those guns legally in Colorado? The question not being asked, how does an unemployed graduate student afford to buy them? Look, a decent AR-15 rifle costs $1,000 or more all by itself. The shotgun and the two handguns would easily run another $1,000 total. Spare mags, sights, slings, and so on, you're going to run another $1,000 across those three firearms. The bulletproof vest, that's easily another $800. And then you have all the money spent on bomb-making materials. Which brings us to our next question. As you know, police say that Holmes rigged his apartment with an incredibly complicated maze of fire bombs. But on the day he was arrested, he immediately told police about the bombs. Why? So our second question, where did this graduate student in neuroscience learn how to make a series of bombs so complicated that the FBI took 2 days to figure out how to disarm them? One official said the intricacy of these bombs is something rarely seen outside of war zones. He had a tripwire set behind the door to kill anyone who opened it. And yet, after setting this intricate death trap, decides to warn police about it before someone's killed? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Neither does what police are saying about this being a lone wolf attack.
All the evidence we have, every single indicator is that this is all Mr. Holmes's activity and that he wasn't particularly aided by anyone else.
But is that true? Eyewitness reports from the scene indicate that Holmes got a phone call from someone inside the theater, and also that tear gas was thrown from more than one location.
He got a phone call, and most people, when they get phone calls in theaters, they go straight out into the lobby to answer it. This person went directly to the emergency exit. He had his foot propped open by the door, and from the crack, it looked like he was signaling somebody or looking for somebody to come his way.
As I was sitting down to get my seat, I noticed that a person came up to the front row, to the front right, sat down, and as credits were going, I noticed it seemed like he got a phone call. So he went out towards the emergency exit doorway, which I thought was unusual to take a phone call.
From what we saw, he wasn't alone. He had someone with him because the second can of tear gas didn't come from his side.
So what you need to know is that there are so many questions about what really happened in Colorado. Questions we don't have answers to and we may never have answers to. What is unfortunate is that instead of really digging into why this apartment would be rigged to kill, but then Holmes would then warn police and then lawyer up and not say anything else, where he got the funding and the firearms training, And these eyewitness reports that there was more than one person, yeah, instead of asking those questions, national media want to focus all their attention on why guns were legal in the first place. National media seems too busy playing the political game, not busy enough looking into what really happened. And that is Reality Check.
If you'd like to make your voice heard on the story, head over to Ben.
That was not produced by InfoWars TV or Prison Planet TV. That was produced by a local Fox affiliate. That is amazing that at least they're recognizing that there's an appetite for the truth.
Yes.
Asking questions on mainstream TV. And the points you brought up are valid. When the police officer says every single indicator says he acted alone, well, that statement is false. We just saw 2 eyewitness testimonies, 3, just in this one report produced by a local news station, that there were other accomplices. So when the police officer spokesman right off says every single indicator, we know he's lying.
Well, you know, he had 4 stars on his collar, which means he's probably the chief or high-ranking.
Oh yeah, he's
officer.
up there.
Yeah, definitely.
This was not an off-the-cuff remark.
Bill City, our current police chief in Oklahoma City, was a public information officer during the bombing investigation, and he did the exact
in Oklahoma City, yeah,
running interference, throwing out red herrings left and right, and we saw at least 17 times in the archive footage. And this guy reminded me, wow, this is a knockoff of Bill City, just lying to the press.
Yeah, and like I said before, the point I emphasized before, these events are happening in these heavily militarized counties. Aurora had just made headlines. Judge Napolitano called him out for pulling up that impromptu checkpoint at a intersection and pulling out dozens of people, families, approaching them barrel first to track down a bank robbery suspect. This was a flagrant violation of the Fourth Amendment by any stretch of the imagination. So that department has been co-opted. They've jumped on board the federal grant-making bandwagon, and they are following its police state dictates. And that guy, 4 stars on his collar, saying that every single indicator, well, that's false. We just saw 3 reports. Obviously, they're covering something up. It's just amazing that what we have shown on this show, on our debut guest host of the Alex Jones Show, is the depths of what this government is proven to go to push forth a political agenda. We talked to Andrew Griffin and Stephanie Sledge about Tucson and about the Colorado shooting. We talked to Julia Davis about her case, unrelated except in methodology, except in the same method they used to prosecute, persecute, to murder witnesses. We cannot put anything past them. And the fact is that they want gun control. This is all about the Brady bill. They're always talking about the extended magazines. They're talking about the guns, the ammunition. I have another question. How is this person able to purchase 6,000 rounds of ammunition in a short period of time without being paid a visit by the ATF, like someone I have talked to in the state of Oklahoma who was paid a visit by the ATF when he decided to take advantage of a price decrease and cash in some savings and buy a bunch of ammo? He was paid a visit. They started asking him questions. Why are you buying so much ammunition? It wasn't an outrageous amount at all. But in this case, this guy is able to go on a buying spree and purchase 6,000 rounds of ammunition. That's at least $3,000. That's his biggest expense right there. And
he's throwing up flags left and right. My best educated guess is he was given this, he was provided, and this stinks to high heaven. You have to look at all of the different aspects. Excellent video. In fact, that was out of a affiliate out of Denver, I believe.
Really?
Yes.
So they're close to the scene. That's what we see time and time again, is the local news affiliates really picking up on the truth. We saw this in Oklahoma City, and when KFR TV was reporting on John Doe No. 2 and the other bombs being pulled out of the rubble. They did that for about a year until they were bought out by the New York Times, and everyone was fired, and they stopped all that reporting. So you see these outlets trying to get the truth out, and then you see the methodology, the cover-up come in. That cannot be tolerated. Anyways, after this, we are going to get back to the callers. I apologize. We got a lot of people calling in. We've had a lot of different topics, but we had to get this information out. I urge you, if you want to find out the true methodology of deep state false flag terror attacks, go to the info shop. Check out the movie we produced on noblelie.com. Like I said before, the purpose of the movie was just not to expose the Oklahoma City bombing. That was a purpose, its primary purpose, but the underlying purpose was to expose the methodology, the telltales of a false flag attack. For when it happens again, which it will, by definition, because the true perpetrators were not held accountable. Therefore, they will magnify their psychosis. They will do it again. You must recognize it for what it is. And the thing with Oklahoma City is that people can look at this evidence with an objective eye because they're not scared about it anymore. They're not scared about Oklahoma City. They're scared about other things. But they can view this evidence, realize what this government is capable of, and view current events in that lens.
You buy the movie, you support Infowars.com, the staff that works here, and we've been here. This is our third time in the last 2.5 years. Excellent staff. These people really bust their tail every single day of the week, even though they may not be on the air every day. We know for a fact that they're behind the scenes, making sure that the news that you listen to and that you watch on Prison Planet TV is vetted, is genuine, and is the real McCoy. So you don't have any, there's no second guesswork here.
Yeah, we're guest hosting the lead tank in Patton's drive towards Europe in the information war. We're on it. Maybe we're also the biggest target, but oh well.
If I may take a minute to plug Behold the Pale Horse. Excellent movie. Charlie Daniels does the narration and some of the music. Good friend of ours, Kay Beach, is also in the movie.
My good friend Charles Orban's in that, yeah.
Mr. Undersea from Dallas, great filmmaker. Kay was very excited when she told me she had the opportunity to be interviewed. Catherine Albrecht, great cast of interview folks in there. So be sure to purchase that on InfoWars.
And soundtrack and interviews with Charlie Daniels.
Yes. And Charlie's been a guest on this show quite often, I guess, in the last month. Was listening to the interview with Alex and Joel Gilbert a couple of days ago. That's the beauty of having Alex's show on our station in Oklahoma City. I am definitely going to, when I get home tonight, get a copy of this online. I'm going to support these folks. I want to see how Joel literally picked apart the official narrative, then the counter narrative. This is a whole different view.
The limited hangout. He picked apart everything.
Exactly. So let's see, Dreams of My Real Father, directed by Joel Gilbert. Excellent movie there. And then, of course, the new book, Alex and staff are carrying, Clouded Titles. For any of you folks that, looks like we got a break coming up, just check it out. Interview, let's see here, basically by David Krieger, Clouded Titles, Who Really Owns Your Home?
That's very important to know these days when home ownership is going to be a thing of the past, especially when the economy tanks, goes downtown after the election. Anyways, you're listening to The Alex Jones Show. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to the final segment of The Alex Jones Show. I am Holland Vandennieuwenhof. I also host a radio show of my own called Free Mind Report. It's on freemindreport.com on the Logos Radio Network. Chris Emery joins me. He is
it's great to be here.
Co-producer on A Noble Lie, and we're also working on our next project, a treatment of mind control called State of Mind, the Psychology of Control. We start filming next month. We project that we will be complete by early fall, and you will see that in the info shop, applying the same methodology we use in exposing the Oklahoma City bombing, now pointing it at the concept and execution of mind control. Now, before we go to our callers, I apologize for Ralph to California for waiting so long. We'll get to you in a second. I urge our listeners to go to Infowars.com, check out the latest article by Aaron Dykes. It's titled, Foreign Troops to Confiscate American Guns Under UN Treaty. Check it out. This is the end state they desire. This is the end state, the signing of this treaty. And what does it hold for us? Article 15 is fairly obvious. There is nothing prohibiting and everything pointing the way towards international assistance in enforcement of this international treaty. And that could include up to UN troops on the streets confiscating weapons. It's in here. The provisions are here. There's nothing to stop it. And if there is a widespread nullification effort by the states, which I highly urge everyone out there to get on board. How can we fight back against this? How can we fight back? Call your state rep. Call your congressman right now. Tell them to vote no on this treaty for one thing. Tell them if they vote yes, they're out. They're out. Then go to your local level if this passes and say nullify, 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 nullify. We must stop this from happening because the first instance we lose our guns, we're never getting those back. They're gone. They will never let that come back.
I could see total chaos in the Oklahoma State House in Oklahoma City and the Texas State House in Austin. This is not going to fly. And I believe there's 17 states already in the U.S. that have the concealed carry permit. There's no way that this is going to pass in those states. They may be the holdouts, and hopefully they're going to be the bastion of at least the Second Amendment freedom.
This ain't done yet, folks. It ain't done by a long shot. Let's go to our caller, our longest, most patient one, Ralph from California. Ralph, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, thank you for taking my call, Holland and Chris. It was a great program today. I listen to Alex Jones every day. This is my first time calling, and love the talk with Julia and also with Stephanie. I have a large following on my Facebook page. Some people send me certain things, and a couple things that I haven't heard yet regarding the events happening, and I'd like your comments regarding the Illuminati card game. The Illuminati card game has pictures of certain events that are happening, and somebody sent me a picture of the cinema happening, you know, the event that happened at the theater, and also the upcoming events in the Olympics in England. I'd like your comment on that.
Well, that's a very long, involved answer. For those of you listening who want to do homework on what you brought up, where should they go? Where should they go, Ralph?
Anaheim police shooting, and how they're probably going to take the guns away from police, and right now they're trying to get the police involved in a lot of events where killing people that are unarmed, so that the people get up in arms against people, police having...
Oh, yeah, the whole agenda is across the board. You see what they're trying to pull off behind the scenes in Anaheim, turning the guns of the state upon women and children, turning guns. I'm reminded of the bonus army in the 20s. This is what this reminds me of, turning guns and dogs and weapons of war upon peaceful protesters. I mean, this is where we're going, folks. Let's have one more caller. Actually, it's too late, folks. It's been a jam-packed show. I apologize to the callers. Next time that I guest host, if that happens again, we will devote more time to the callers, I promise.
This has been outstanding. Thank you.
And once again, we are the producers for Noble Lie. Please check that out at the info shop. And stay tuned to Prison Planet TV for further footage. Thank you very much.
You have got to lock onto this, and InfoWarsTeam.com has all the information, so I encourage you to do it. And I'm a perfect example of what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. And given the huge amount of products on the market, I mean, there's probably a million different supplements that promise a million different things, which is one reason that it's hard for me to jump on board with anything, because it's so hard to discern what is genuine and it is not. So we're hearing this feedback from professional trainers, guys who have no dog in the hunt, except they're in the market, so they must actually advocate the products that actually work and produce results.
Exactly.
And apparently they are top of the line. So I'm a believer now, and not only because of the testimony, because I had some this morning for the first time, just a little. I didn't want to overdo it and be bouncing off the walls, but I am a believer. And given these days where we are under constant environmental and chemical assault, we are being bombarded by toxins left and right. Our food is not nurturing. It's not giving us the nutrients that our bodies need. We need something to overcome, not just trying to watch our eating habits, because it's hard just to go to the grocery store and pick out the right foods, even if they're organic and pesticide-free. You're still dealing with a lot of problems with the environment and the toxins that you deal with on a daily basis, from the light bulbs in your house to the smart meter that's pumping out radiation every second of the day that you're in the house. You need the genuine, natural stuff that's going to take you over the top to try to overcome that as much as possible. We need every advantage we can. So obviously, go check out the longevity products at the info shop and get ahead and live long and prosper. Because obviously, I was having a discussion last night with Deborah Stevens about this. There is no way that most of the stuff that is basically the products and the food that we ingest, it cannot be an accident. This is the 21st century. It's not like they can't figure out that the curly-Q light bulbs emit mercury at a constant basis, poisonous gases. I mean, the one thing they chose to replace the incandescent light bulb is also one of the most poisonous devices ever put on the market.
One of the key things that people have to remember is that right now, a lot of folks are not eating actual food. They're eating food products or that are imitations of food. So what longevity does, it breaks it down to the
It is your PrisonPlanet.tv memberships that fund so much of what we do here on this operation. And then we're more than happy for the TV show, after it's aired live, then be leaked out onto the web to tens of millions of people. That's our goal.
welcome to the Alex Jones Show. I am not Alex Jones. I am the guest host today, Friday, July 27th, in the year 2012. I am Holland Vandennieuwenhof. I am joined also by my fellow guest co-host, Chris Emery.
Thanks for having us. I want to thank the staff with AJ Productions. This is actually quite an honor to be here, and it's awesome. It's a great opportunity. We're going to have a lot of good information for you folks, so stay with us through 2 o'clock.
Yeah, exactly. We were on the show earlier in the week, and afterwards Alex asked us to guest host, and it is our honor and pleasure to fill in for him. This is actually, somewhat of a dream of mine. I've been listening to Alex Jones since 1999 when I first got out of the Marine Corps. Here in Austin, when I lived here, listening on the old KLBJ. And now here I am several years later, guest hosting one day for Alex Jones, and I can take this off the bucket list. I've done it. But we are here. We are, if you don't know, we are the producers and of the movie A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City, 1995, which is the deconstruction of the official story of the Oklahoma City bombing, and it's the culmination of 16 years of active resistance to the official story by the truth seekers in Oklahoma City and around the country and the globe, people who have been involved in the story from the beginning, fighting the info war, the agenda that was tried to push down the throats of the American people following the Oklahoma City bombing. And, of course, A Noble Lie is available at the info shop. Highly advise you pick it up. It's as I have been told, time and time.
The basic building blocks of the nutrition is coming from the plants. Mm-hmm. And I was turned on to good nutrition about 25 years ago. This is taking it to a whole new level. And like I said, I got to know a lot of those trainers. And I was on my way to actually becoming an overweight person. And, at my age now, I would have been probably beyond the point of return. What I encourage you folks to do is get on the InfoWarsTeam.com website, get onto the longevity button, and just see what they have. And it's not only the food supplements, but the Safe Cosmetics. There's a lot of other, coffees and so forth. And this is the stuff that's the real deal. It comes from the Mother Earth, and it's not processed and not synthetic. I know Alex and his team have done a lot of good research on this, and this is a company you can trust.
Exactly. So get on board, get healthy, because we need as many healthy and awake info warriors out there as possible. We need every advantage we can. Today on the Alex Jones Show, we're going to have a couple of guests on. The first one is going to be Andrew Griffin of the RedDirtReport.com, and he is going to be looking at the shooting in Aurora in the light of what we know to be true about deep state operations, false flag operations. This government, this regime's capability and capacity and proven dirty hands in using mass murder, in executing mass murder to execute a political agenda. And unfortunately, the shooting in Colorado, I don't want it to be this way. When it first happened, I was like, I'm tired of the false flag attacks. I'm tired of this being ramrodded by blood down our throats. But we cannot walk away from the facts that there are a lot of fishy things with the shooting in Aurora, including with the suspect, his connections to mind control research. And they are deep. If you look at Wayne Madsen's work on James Holmes' connections to
very mysterious,
yes, NIH funding and so forth. The first thought that struck me was, there's not a whole lot of people in this country, in this world, who are involved in mind control research, and then one of them just happens to shoot up a theater in Colorado at basically the most politically advantageous time for the establishment, when Operation Fast and Furious is exploding on the headlines, despite the best efforts of the mainstream media, when apparently the Congress is voting on a UN gun control ban. Again, the best expose of the Oklahoma City bombing produced thus far. And Chris Emery is the narrator and producer, but he is the voice of A Noble Lie. Chris?
It was basically 12 years in the making, and we used a lot of the information in the Bombing Investigation Committee. Folks, if you really want a good review, at least what they call a primer of the case, please go ahead and get a copy of this. You will be amazed at the information on there. We're looking at doing a follow-up for the next anniversary in 2013 to add more clips, extended interviews, So next year is even going to be, we're taking the next step. And this thing is sold absolutely amazing. 21 different countries, foreign countries, very well here in the U.S. Thanks, of course, in large part to Alex Jones and his staff. It was a huge jumpstart on it. And we were very honored to be accepted at 4 different film festivals in a 5-month period, capturing the Best Picture Feature Documentary honor at the Bare Bones Film Festival in Oklahoma. And so it's just taken off like great guns. And the information, I guess, is what really it speaks for itself. And I was very honored to work with the film crew.
Yes, it was very pleasing to see the reception by the like-minded community. That was very pleasing to see that they approved of our efforts and they appreciated the information that we had to show them about the bombing. But we've also experienced some recognition from the filmmaking industry itself, which is pleasing to know that we did produce a very good product. And it's been recognized in several film festivals and won awards. And so I think that one of the primary reasons that we tried to get the documentary out in this time, right before the year 2012, was not just to expose the lie that is the official story of Oklahoma City, but to expose the methodology of the false flag attack. That because people who are guilty, perpetrators who are still walking around, were not held accountable, by definition, it will happen again. It has happened again, and recently, in recent days, we may be looking at its manifestation. And we'll be having our guests on, Andrew Griffin of Red Dirt Report, Stephanie Sledge of thegovernmentrag.com, to be talking about the Colorado shooting, the Tucson shooting, and the implications for tomorrow. So thank you for joining us on The Alex Jones Show. Welcome back to The Alex Jones Show. I am not Alex Jones. I am Holland Vandennieuwenhof, guest hosting today, Friday, July 27th. Joined by Chris Emery, my fellow producer on A Noble Lie. It is our pleasure, like I said, to be in Alex's studio here in Austin, Texas, and being able to present this information from this pulpit, this not the ballot box or the cartridge box, but the preacher's box, talking about the issues that are very important. And like I said, it's been a pleasure and an honor to be here. Chris, Chris introduced me to the tangy tangerine this morning. I said, I really need something to keep me on ball today. I really don't want to lose my train of thought. And I'm always reluctant to jump on the bandwagon of anything. And I've heard a lot about tangy tangerine and the longevity products, but I must say that I can feel it. And this is the first time I've tried it. And Chris, you went jogging around Town Lake this morning. I
went jogging, got up extra early, and I basically have a daily regimen. I'll go jogging at least 5 days a week, do the tangy tangerine, do the rebound first, tangy tangerine twice a day, and also have the Majestic Earth and the longevity. And I was turned on to it by Deborah Stevens and Richard Reeves with the InfoWars team. Over the last 35 years, I've been approached on different, trying to market different products. This is the first one that I really locked into. And the reason being is not only because Alex and his staff are carrying it, and I believe in the product, that I actually contacted, a lot of folks may not be aware of this, but I actually was a photographer with NCAA football in the NFL for 9.5 years. 2 weeks ago, I got on the phone with 2 of the guys, trainers that I kept in touch with over the years. They went on to basically work in the pro ranks. And I says, what about this longevity product? And no sooner than I got the word longevity out of my mouth, this is, if you have a chance to market this product, please do so. And they said the main reason is it is a plant-based supplement.
This is what the trainers are saying, the professional trainers.
Both of them, one owns a very successful chain of workout clubs in Chicago and Milwaukee, and the other one in Atlanta. They don't even talk to each other anymore. And I got the same summary from both of them within a matter of about 20 minutes, talking to them on the phone. And I said, that's it. I'm locking and loading on this. And I tell you what, folks, I reached a threshold. I was losing weight when I came back from Australia. I was about 25 pounds overweight. I got to a threshold, and I couldn't get below that threshold. And I lost another 7 pounds getting on longevity. My food bill has been cut in half. I'm eating better. I'm feeling better. I have a lot more energy during the day. And, folks, this is the real deal.